but
sorry.
Okay, we're
everyone.
recording now. Hello.
Okay, is Supervisor Vasquez, if you'd like to say a quick greeting here.
Sure. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. I hope we can have a productive meeting. I really appreciate all your efforts in putting this plan together. I hear we're about 75% of the way through it. So we're almost there. There's light at the end of the tunnel. So thank you for all your hard work.
Here we go. And is Supervisor Brigade here? A large list of people. I didn't see her name.
I don't see her.
Everybody's just getting here right at about dusk.
So there's someone with a phone number that ends in 1022. If that's Supervisor Brigade, that'd be great. If not, you may want to mute yourself because right now we're hearing a lot of what you're saying.
Rob, that's John Paxton. Am I muted or no?
Not right now.
Okay, I'm calling in by phone. Do I mute by *6?
I
can mute him.
My phone, so
we got it.
Look at that, Melissa just muted you.
Hello.
Hi. Naomi, go ahead.
Hi, this is Naomi Yazzie Sloan. Yes, this is Naomi Yazzie Sloan here. I'm with District 4 Supervisor Judy Begay's office on her behalf.
Excellent. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, Melissa, so I guess our next slide.
Pizza dog.
Normally we do dinner, so thank you everyone for sharing your dinner time with us.
Okay, enough of that. Is Evelyn with us? I think she is.
Yeah, I'm here.
Is that good for you?
That is wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Melissa, were you going to cover this?
So just in terms of virtual meetings, I think everybody knows, please keep your phone, your microphone on mute unless you wish to ask a question. And then here's a dial-in number in case anyone needs to use that instead of getting on the computer. So we'll just flash it up for a minute.
Excellent.
And we can move on to the agenda then.
Okay, and the first thing I get to share with you about the agenda is that we have rearranged items 2 and 3, I believe. Is that correct, Melissa, from the public agenda? So we can get straight into the public comments and questions review. I think at this point, if there is anyone here from the public that would like to share a thought with the committee before we get started, we'd like to hear that. We do ask that everyone keep your comments limited to 3 minutes so that we're fair to everyone. Is there anyone here that would like to share a thought with us tonight?
Rob, could I interrupt real quick? I think we needed to do a count of the committee members. We did not do that.
Okay.
Just real quick, I do see that we had with us, we have Dave Browning, Bernice Carver, Sailor Caudle, Monica Julian, John Ruggles, Evelyn Wani, and Rob Wilson.
Concur.
Anybody else from the committee joined us that I missed?
All right. The first hand I saw go up on the screen was from Mr. Walters. So,
yeah, I'd like to just make a quick statement here. I worked 4.5 years on the regional plan, the previous regional plan, not the one that just started. And I think it would be good to explain to some people, and maybe this has been done, I apologize if we're covering old ground, explain why the regional plan dictated some different changes, such as the densities and some different deals. This was all voted on by the voters, so it does tend to override some of the area plans, activity centers, those sort of things. So, Melissa, was that talked about?
We have talked about the regional plan, yes.
Because I got a couple of phone calls from some concerned citizens, and just because I'm on planning and zoning, and I explained to them, and they didn't seem to know that. So that may be something that we want to cover here at some near point, so people understand that you're not just making changes. These are changes that were voted on by the voters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don. And just to kind of take off where he left off there, For folks that may not be familiar, in the hierarchy of plans, our area plan is kind of at the beginning, and it's defining our specific neighborhood, its character and values and characteristics. And it's used by planning and zoning and the county supervisors when they're faced with making decisions about land use and other things relating to our community. All right. Anyone else that would like to share a thought with us here this evening?
Just one comment, kind of amplifying what Don said. The regional plan was voted on, yes, but it was only voted on by Flagstaff residents. It was not voted on by the county. Very simply, it went to the County Board of Supervisors for approval after that. So kind of a fine point, but nevertheless, that's the way it worked. Otherwise, 100%.
Thanks,
and John, that is true, John. That was voted on by only the city, and because the county is included only in the Flagstaff metropolitan area, but the Board of Supervisors did adopt that, and that's why for the county's aspect in the regional plan areas, it was adopted.
Rob, if I could just mention that I believe Liz Baldwin has just joined us as well.
Excellent. Another committee member, Liz, thank you for being here this evening. Looking for some additional public comment. Mr. Leroy.
Can you hear me okay? I had myself muted.
Yes.
Okay, just a quick question, and you can send it supplementally. With respect to the changes that were just discussed by Don and voted on by the supervisors, is there a writing that I can get my hands on that would help to differentiate that? In other words, with respect to zoning, housing types, lot sizes, commercial, etc.
If you're asking, is the regional plan available? It certainly is online in the county's website. And I'm sure Melissa could put up a link.
If it's on the county website, I'll get it. So the regional plan.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Melissa. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'll put the link in the chat.
Okay, great. And then, so I'm working on my 120 seconds. So the regional plan, as voted on by the supervisors, dictates a lot of the language that has obviously been concerning to me overall. Is that right, Rob?
There are two different documents with two different purposes. So
Rob, I can answer that if you like. Okay.
No, please do.
So there's the Flagstaff Regional Plan, which, as Don was explaining, is covers all of Doney Park, Timberline, Fernwood, as well as it goes far out to Belmont. It goes north and south, and it encompasses all of Flagstaff. There's that document, and then there's the county's comprehensive plan. That also has been adopted by the Board of Supervisors, and then there's the area plan. So there are basically three overriding documents. Overarching.
May I have a copy of the comprehensive plan as well, Melissa, since I got it on a roll?
Sure. They're all on our website, and I'll have.
Okay, no, that's fine. I didn't know.
Yep, we'll get you the links.
No, that's awesome, because if I've been barking up the wrong tree the whole time, then I owe a lot of people a lot of apologies. So I just would like to get the facts straight. Thank you.
You're welcome. Actually, Jessica, would you mind putting that in the chat? Otherwise, I have to minimize the screen.
Yes.
You know, I can wait, and Melissa, I can wait till you get to the office and you just send me, or I can just go on the website. How about this? If I have problems finding it on my own, can you just send it to me?
Yeah, I think we'll put it in the chat. I just can't do it right now, and I'll have to get out of the
presentation. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Rob.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Leroy. Anyone else from the public that would like to share some thoughts with us this evening? And if you would, go ahead and speak up, because I can only see part of everyone, so I can't see everybody's hand. And identify.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Karen, is that you speaking?
Yeah, this is Teresa Alfred.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was wondering, is there a timeline to this plan, like an actual date of completion?
Boy, that's a great question. It was originally estimated to take, I think, somewhere between a year and about 16 months with a meeting once a month of the committee. We're probably at the 16-month point right now. And I would suggest that at this point, we probably have another 3 to 4 months of time left of working on this. Most of that will be open houses and public comment periods and things like that. We're very close on finishing the editing of the current plan. And the next steps that will be involved will be the open houses and public comment periods so that we can see just how we did on drafting this document.
I'm also concerned about the wording. I've seen where there were places that the word shall was crossed out, the word should was put in.
Are you hungry now, Annie?
Yes. The document that we started editing was the one that was originally generated back in 2000 and approved in 2001. And in that document, the word shall was used multiple times. But the problem with that is that our document is not an authoritative document. It doesn't have, the rule of law behind it. So we can't make definitive absolute statements like shall. So what we do is we are using the word should to communicate to both the Board of Supervisors and the Planning and Zoning Commission as clearly as we can within the confines of the document, exactly how we feel.
I still have concerns about this because the word should is still kind of wishy-washy, and planning and zoning are supposed to be looking at what you've come up with as to what the people actually want. And it seems to me like, oh, you can do this if you want, or you could do that if you want. But if it's something like density, people are definitely against more density. And
I can take an answer.
Seem to be a very good word that maybe it should be worded differently instead of using should.
I can add to that, Rob. So on a policy document like this, and this is a policy document that is used to guide decision making, we use the word should because nothing in the document is a code. Our zoning ordinance is where we use the word shall because that's the actual document that guides and sets out rules for how development takes place. So there is another tier of documents that we use in terms of development standards. So that is along with the subdivision ordinance and then our engineering and design manual. So those are all the documents that are the shall documents, if you will. But we can get into that in some more detail later.
And Teresa, I think in tonight's discussions about the chapter we're working on, you're going to, that's exactly what we'll be talking about. So stay tuned.
Okay, and thank you very much.
Sure. Is there another member of the public that would like to make a comment? And if so, please state your name.
I would. Joshua Ware.
Okay. Thank you, Joshua. Karen.
I was reading over a couple of different chapters and I came across the public safety chapter line item PS4, which is already a state law. So, which involves, any type of discharging of firearms within a quarter mile of any habitable structure. So I'm not sure if you guys even need to include that. Just as some insight. And then the other thing that was concerning to me was on the land use and development chapter, in particular for the zoning for the planned residential developments of 10 acres or larger with lot sizes of 1 acre lot sizes. Would that not increase the density of approximately 230 some odd percent if these 10 acre planned residential developments or lot sizes are only at 1 acre? And what would that impact be on something like our water table? Because I was reviewing over the Doney Park presentation of April 9th, and they mentioned a lot of things in regards to future growth, such as land for development of services is very low. as well as the main line infrastructure won't support the growth in our area. And then additionally, when it comes to their future concerns that they themselves put out, no secondary supply, groundwater contamination, and everything that Doney Park Water presented to this committee, would that not all be worth looking into due to just the impact of trying to increase some of these residential areas?
Rob, are you still with us? So if I could ask everyone to turn off videos, I think we're having some issues with bandwidth. That might help. I think we may have lost Rob. I think he was frozen. So yeah, it would be helpful if everybody could turn off your video. So I will, Joshua, if you can still hear me, we will talk in some detail about those specific policies that you were just mentioning from the land use chapter. We're going to go and visit those tonight. So we'll talk about those and talk about what those mean. And in terms of the thank you for the note on the public safety chapter. That was discussed by the committee, and it was just reiterating what they already know to be state law. And then in terms of the water, the county is limited to some degree as far as what we can use to make decisions, and water is one of those issues that we don't have a lot of leeway on in terms of looking at the impact. So that's where the state laws has actually limited the county to some degree, because that's not something that we can actually get into in a lot of detail in terms of these decision makings. If everyone knows how to turn off your video, that would be super helpful. Okay, I don't know that we have Rob back yet. He may be trying to rejoin. So did anyone else from the public have a comment they'd like to make?
Yes, I do.
Who's speaking?
I can get me back on there. Here we go. Let me see if I can get it back on. All sorts of silly things are happening. Okay, this is Miss Burdorf in Doney Park. And I had two things. Someone earlier mentioned they didn't think there should be anything regarding shooting. And I have to, if I understood what they said correctly, I have to make a comment differing from that, because I have someone that shoots only 2 properties away from my property. And to me, that's too close. And I thought in Doney Park that shooting was not supposed to be allowed, any firearms to be shooting in Doney Park area. That's one issue. The other one was, I haven't read the whole thing yet, but I'm hearing that very possibly if these changes are implemented, that is going to limit, and a lot of us will have to get rid of animals that we have out here, i.e. maybe goats, chickens, horses, whatever. And I don't know that there's anyone out here. A lot of us moved out here for that reason, to be able to have our animals.
Thank you, Ms. Burdoff. We've noted your concerns, and just so you know, we're not proposing any changes to any of the animal keeping standards. That hasn't come across in what we've discussed. That's something totally separate from what this area plan has started to address.
Okay, good. Glad to hear that.
Did anyone else have a question or comment?
Yes, I do.
Who's speaking?
This is Diane Jacks. I'm here with my husband, Bruce Jacks. Hi. The question I have, it's the public comment period that is going to be coming up. How much weight will the public really have on this? Their opinion, their thoughts, or really does it come down to our county board of supervisor making that decision? I just really curious on how much decisions are based on what the public has to say about your final draft?
I still don't think Rob is with us, so I will respond to that. So this is a document for your community, and we are we have not entered the open house phase yet, where you'll have the opportunity to comment on every goal and policy that has been worked on so far. And then after that, there'll be public hearings. So your voice matters a lot. That's why we're having these virtual meetings right now. If they were in person, then we would have a large room and you would all be invited to that room. So this is something that, part of the process is to invite public comment. The reason why there's a committee working on it is because there's a lot of work to be done. And then the committee is working on your behalf, and they will put this back out to the committee. And I think Rob is joining us again. So I hope that answers your question, but there's quite a lot. Ultimately, it's voted on by the Board of Supervisors at a public hearing.
But that it kind of doesn't answer the question, is that the public comment, yes, we can see the final product, we can look at it, but does it have any weight to make changes? Or is it really pretty much set in stone at that point in time?
So the draft, and that's what we're working on again tonight, will be available during public open house, at least two rather. And comments that all of you from the community make will go back to this committee. The committee will look at those again, and that's before making a recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission and then the Board of Supervisors for public hearings. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And I appreciate everything y'all are doing and the time and effort that you put into it, which is tremendous. It's just coming in later, and you don't want to miss the boat to have a chance to say, hey, I don't like the direction this thing is going. Just wanting to know before you get to the end, once you submit it to the public comment and all, that there is still a little bit of room to move on some of those final decisions is what I was looking for.
We're still in the drafting phase. So Rob, are you back?
I am. I lost internet connection for some reason, so I'm on my cell. I apologize.
Well, we all turned off our video, so hopefully that won't happen again. But so I'll turn it back to you. We're still on public comment.
Excellent. I appreciate that. So if there is anyone else from the public that would like to make a comment, if you could announce your name, please, and then share your thoughts, I'd appreciate it.
Rob, it's William. Can I get another 120 seconds, or would you prefer I wait to the end, sir?
Well, it's 180 actually, so we'll give you your last 60.
I told you I was never good at math. So real quick, and to echo the previous question, I haven't reviewed I thank you, Melissa, for posting those on the chat. I got them. I'm going to read those and compare them, and that will obviously shed a ton of light on a lot of different items. So having said that, with respect to the last question, ultimately, community comments are made to the committee. Committee hypothetically is there to represent the majority of the survey voices, I'm assuming. So then if ultimately there is a conflict between the survey results and what the committee and zoning and planning wants, who wins? Or I'm sorry, strike that. County supervisors want, who wins?
So that's probably a question that we're not really supposed to respond to since it wasn't on the agenda. I don't know. Ultimately,
okay. It's okay. No, it in writing or next meeting, whenever. Thank you.
Sure. Yep, we can define that hierarchy.
Thank you.
Rob, I'd like to mention Brian Bates has joined us.
Brian, welcome.
Hello, everyone. My apologies for being late.
And for those of you that don't know, Brian is our co-chair of this committee. He's in District 4 and I'm in District 2. All right.
Thank you for picking up, Rob.
Uh-oh. And I don't have internet, so I'm on my phone. I apologize. So we're in public comment. If there's anyone else from the public that would like to share a thought with us, if you could announce your name and then share your thoughts, please.
Yeah, Rob Friedman. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Yeah, and I have a comment. I'm a 41-year resident of the Doney Park Timberline area and seen a lot of changes over the years. And, you know, I heard tonight there were 3 different area plans that kind of overlap and guide decision-making. And then there were Arizona laws that could come in and affect different parts of the plans. And I didn't hear anything about the comments and the results from the survey, because it seems like the community members that answered those questions on the survey were expressing their vision for the area plan. I know I did when I voted on, or not voted, but when I answered the question about acquiring forest land for development through land exchanges. You know, that was my vision for the future. And I don't think there's enough emphasis put on the results of the survey that I'm hearing enough. I think that should be the bottom line and the overwhelming part of the whole decision-making process. Just like William just said, he was kind of asking that question, and I think I can answer that, and it's the Board of Supervisors that's going to have the final say. I feel like there's more emphasis needs to be put on the results of the survey, because when the community members answered those questions, they were expressing their vision for the area. And I feel like that should be the main guiding force in creating the vision statement, is what the community wants. They're the ones who live out here, the ones who pay the property taxes. And I've been doing that for over 40 years out here. So that's my opinion on that one, part of it anyway.
Hey, Russell, so on that topic, just because we have a lot of folks here tonight that may not have attended previous meetings, when the survey results were completed, which was in the December timeframe, we had 2 full committee meetings examining those particular results. And those results are, I believe, what are informing the committee members' opinions on the changes that we're making as we do that, because we all value that very, very much. So if you weren't part of this process or watching back then, those meetings are available online, as are the survey results. And I would encourage you to go back and watch those to see that they are taken very seriously.
Well, I was attending some of the meetings back then, and I do remember that in the vision statement, the land use part of it, there was actually part of the vision statement that stated that the word was used "we," where we support or want planned communities and subdivisions. And I actually brought that up in a public comment, is who was we? You might remember that. And now that has been taken out of the vision statement, but I tried to find it, you know, the updates on it today, I couldn't, but I feel like there's just not enough emphasis on the results of the survey, because that, in my opinion, should be the bottom line. That's what the people out here that live out here, including yourself, that's what they want for this community. And when they answered those questions about expanding the rural activity centers, or acquiring forest land for future development, or high density housing, I mean, it was pretty overwhelmingly, you know, against that stuff. And that should be in the vision statement, in my opinion, from kind of written from their perspective, from the community. That's all of us.
Hey, Russell, this is Melissa. I'm going to jump in here because we do need to move on, but thank you for that comment. And I think if you stick with us tonight, you'll see in the vision statement, which we've been reviewing during every meeting, that those ideas are captured. So keep hold of that comment, and we will definitely circle back to it, because the survey has been a very important part of this process.
Okay, I'll be here listening.
Thank you.
So
Rob, could I add something real quick? This is Brian Bates.
Sure, go ahead, Brian.
Russell, I want to assure you that we have been going back to the survey, and we took a lot of time putting the survey together. I understand your comment, and I will listen. I've listened to it. We'll pay attention to it, and we're working as best we can to include the community input from the survey. And I appreciate you reminding us that that's where we need to be going back to reference some of our comments. So thank you.
All right, so we're looking for additional public comment. If you have a thought you'd like to share, please announce your name and then share your thought.
Hi, my name is Michael Smith. I've lived in Flagstaff for 40 years, born and raised. I've never lived anywhere else. My dad was the director of the county health department for many years. A little bit earlier, I heard that the county adopted the regional plan that was voted on in the city. I have a little bit of concerns with that, and I apologize. I don't know what effects that has on the current plan that you guys are working on versus what is in the regional plan that was voted on by city residents. I guess my concern is that none of us get to vote in the city. None of the residents in Doney Park, Kachina, Munns Park, Parks. So I apologize. I don't know how that ties into the decisions you guys are making right now, but I do know who votes in Flag, and there's part-time NAU residents, but you don't hear the voice of the whole region. So is anyone able to explain how you guys are taking the information, what was voted on in that, and putting it into this current plan?
Sure, I'd be happy to address that. This is Melissa. And so the County Board of Supervisors did adopt at a public hearing the county's version of the regional plan, which is very similar. So while the city residents do vote on the regional plan for the city, that's a state statute. They have to vote on those. The counties are not required to send those types of documents out to voters. So there's a big difference that way. But the Board of Supervisors did adopt that at a public hearing. So there is the county version of the regional plan. And I believe if you look at the chat, there's a link to that document in the chat you can take a look at.
Yes, thank you, Melissa. And I definitely will. I do think we all know on this phone call that if county residents were able to vote on city issues, the outcome would be quite different. And especially if students at NAU aren't allowed to vote, who may only live here for 6 months. But that's my only concern. I thank you guys all for your time and for this effort. I look forward to listening to the rest of the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Additional public comment, if you have one, we'd like to hear it. Your name first and then your comment.
Hello, are you hearing me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sorry, I'll be real quick because I did speak earlier. I do agree with the last two gentlemen, and I'm wondering if there's a way that more of our opinions could be counted into the ones that were on the survey so that they get so that you all get a real clear idea of what the residents here want and do not want. I agree with the two gentlemen that I think that should be the utmost of importance. And the other thing I was wondering, because I thought there were a number of other people going to be on this meeting on Zoom tonight, and if there is a limit to the number that can be allowed on the Zoom meeting. Thank you.
Melissa, the version of Zoom that you guys have supports hundreds of participants. Is that correct?
I don't know if it supports hundreds, but it will support at least 100.
Okay, and we're not near that right now. We're not blocking anybody out, is
correct
our concern? Okay.
We have 40 people on right now.
Okay, and just as a heads up to those folks that there is still an active survey. There is a driving tour that is set up on the website for our Doney Park area plan. And as part of that tour, you're encouraged to submit survey comments. So there's a way to do that currently, and there will continue to be ways to make public inputs when we get to these open houses. So if there are things in the plan that you don't like when we get to the open house, you'll have another opportunity to share that with our committee.
I have a question. Is there another way, this is Teresa Alfred, is there another way to see that plan? Because not everybody is internet savvy, or they take a picture of whatever that code thing is to get on to do that. Is there something written so that we can actually see what's going on and what they look like? And I'm from the old school. I really don't like doing that much on the computer because I have to be on it for business as it is. But this just seems one more thing that just, I would rather see it in my hands instead. So is there something that's printed out to see this, or?
Well, I don't know that there's a printed copy available anywhere right now, because these are all draft documents and they're being edited, at each meeting. So short of or beyond what we're currently doing, which is posting not just the revised editions as we get through them, but we're also posting those that we're preparing to look at. Beyond that, I'm not sure what we could do. Melissa, do you have any suggestions on that?
The only thing would be if somebody wanted a printed copy, would be to go on our website, and then you could print the PDF off right from our website.
Okay.
Thank
you, Teresa.
Are there pictures that show what the activity centers are looking like? And
yes, there actually is. We have a story map available that I encourage all of you to take a look at, and maybe Jessica could put a link to that in the chat too.
Thank you, Jessica.
So that is an online tool where you can go through, and we've tried to put as many pictures as we can. We probably don't have as many pictures as you would want to see. And it takes you through all the different activity centers as well as other neighborhoods.
And I'm just concerned, are people working there? How much is it going to cost us? I mean, like, we're looking at another whole business that basically is being put forth.
I'm not sure I understand what you're talking about there. What new business?
These activity centers, they're supposed to be for tourists, correct?
No. The activity centers have existed for at least the last 20 years. We have not added anything to them or taken anything away from them. And they are defined as the areas where there is, other than the standard residential activities going on. And there are 7 of them. They have not changed. 6 of them are relatively commercial, and 1 of them is the school and park over off of Silver Saddle and Coachfield.
And Rob, we're going to actually look at some images later on. So we're going to be talking about those tonight.
Okay. And these activity centers, they're supposed to be for the residents then?
They're commercial. It's where the commercial zoning is. So yes, and we'll show you those images in a little bit. We'll show you maps of where they're located.
Okay, thank you.
So other public comment, anyone that has one could share your name first and share a comment. Okay, hearing none, I think we can move on to our next agenda item. I have never done Zoom on my phone, so I'm not even sure how to see what Melissa's screen. There it is.
So Rob, this was the public comments and questions review from the last meeting, and then also some comments that have been emailed.
Right. So
can you see the screen?
Meeting, yes, I can. There were some questions posed at the last meeting that we were unable to answer because of the rules. And so we wanted to make sure that everyone knows we're doing everything we can to address those. The first one was there an increase in the number of rural activity centers? And coincidentally, that's a question that we just talked about. And the answer is no. Those 7 rural activity centers have existed since the previous regional plan. and nothing about them has been changed in this version of the area plan. The next question related to opportunities for public comment. I did touch on that already. There's currently an open survey on that driving tour. You're welcome to post your comments there. They all get to the committee. Written comments can be provided directly to Melissa at mshaw@coconino.az.gov. And we'll also be having a series of open houses and other opportunities for public comment as we get the plan more finished so that we can continue to collect those inputs from everyone. And how can the public look at committee working documents? Another question that we kind of just talked about. The website, the Doney Park Area Plan Update website includes every one of our past meetings. It includes all the documents that we're working on. It includes the story map that Melissa just talked about. It's a wealth of information. If you're interested in the area plan, all of that information is available there, and we encourage you to spend some time exploring there and hopefully learn and see a lot about what we're doing. And that's those three questions. Let's see. Oh man, now reading this off my phone is getting more and more challenging. But it looks like.
Would you like me to read it? Can you, Rob?
Providing additional housing opportunities for a range of incomes and households. So there was a question posed about whether that was a part of the current plan or not. And that is the section of the plan that we're going to be discussing tonight is specifically that. I believe all these questions relate to item 6 there. And
Bob, I think you're on twice now.
I apologize, everybody. All right, let me hang this up. Okay, I'm back online. I apologize for that. And we're going to be talking about each of these questions later on this evening, so there's no good way to answer these specific questions right now. They'll be talked about live, real time here in just a few minutes as we move on through this meeting. And so the next slide, increases the existing zoning density should be rare exceptions. And exceptions should be approved if no other means are feasible to achieve the desired benefits described above. Again, this is something that we're going to be discussing in detail tonight. And so I can't really answer where we stand on these issues right now because we haven't had that conversation. It's important to note that we've been doing basically 1 or 2 chapters per meeting. Tonight we'll update a chapter. The next meeting we're going to update another chapter. And I wish I had a crystal ball and could tell you what we're going to do, but we'll have to wait and do those as we come to them.
Hey, Rob, if I could just clarify then, the text that is in black B, that's one of the proposed policies. And then the questions below were what was submitted based on that portion of the policy. Yep.
We'll be discussing all of that this evening. So we can go to the next slide.
And this is a second comment that was received.
And let's see, this one talks about increases shall be permitted. I believe this one was the one that was there was a typo. There's a missing word here. Shall not be permitted. Land use
Right.
2.
The text highlighted in purple were what came in as highlighted in bold to the email. So it's just cut
and this
verbatim.
is actually this is actually a misquote from our current plan, but it's something that's going to be discussed tonight. The word not is missing in this one. Shall not be permitted. But again, we're going to be talking about this tonight, so can't really predict what the response to each of these issues will be, but you'll see it live real time tonight.
And then there was a third comment, third email, and the committee has all of these.
Yeah, this was an email from Ms. Boston who had some concerns about some things that there weren't any questions. It was just her opinions. And so we have all on the committee received that and are taking that into account as we move forward through this process. As we have said from the beginning of our meetings back in January of last year, your input is critical to this process. These are all the different ways that you can provide your input to us, and we encourage you to do that at any time that you have the opportunity. Melissa's email address is there, the website that has all the information there I talked about, the self-guiding tour link is here, and then the tour link, or the self-driving tours survey, is that last link there. And again, we are going to be planning some open houses coming up here once we've completed the editing that we're doing now, so that everyone will have a chance to see the whole plan and share your thoughts. This slide will be available again at the end of the presentation, so if you didn't get something there, it'll be there. All right, so our meeting notes now. Moving on.
Do you see that slide? Because yes, so there were two sets of notes from April 8th, and then the 21st, where there was not a quorum, but the committee has those notes.
Okay. Was there anyone on the committee that had any input to those notes that you received in advance? So they weren't actually minutes because we weren't a quorum to meeting, they were just notes. Okay. Hearing none, we can move on.
Are the meeting notes accepted from April 8th then?
This is Bernice. I would like to, I'm going to go ahead and put my video on. I have a lot of concerns about, I believe I mentioned about my concern about cluster development. And the answer, this was on April 21st, or yeah, the April 21st meeting, says I was worried about cluster developments could result in open space being developed in the future, resulting in higher density than is usual in Doney Park, Timberline, and Fernwood. And your answer was that cluster development is meant to protect the environment and is in the comprehensive plan. But as I was going through some of the land use things, some of the land use policy, it said that the open space generated by cluster development could be used for the exceptions, which could be to provide affordable housing, multi-unit housing. That really concerned me. And I really think that we really need to take another good look again about downsizing lots to 1 acre and allowing the clustering, and really explain what could happen in the rural activity centers and how they could be expanded into residential neighborhoods and closer to residential. Let's see if there was something else that
Bernice, that's what's on the agenda to talk about tonight. That's specifically what we'll be addressing.
There was one more thing. Let me see. I went through all of these things. Yeah, there's some definitions and not definitions, but I think we need to let the public know exactly what a rural activity center is, because I've been on this committee since it started. I've been to every meeting except for one, and that meeting that I wasn't able to attend, I was able to get online and watch the entire meeting. And I'm still a little confused about some of this, and I've read every single document we've got. So I think we really need to, when we wrote most of this document, when this was presented, I believe it was before we got a lot of the survey results, and we had so much input from the public. And I've really been talking to a lot of neighbors and community members, and I would really like to keep Doney Park as it is and keep the existing density as close to it as we can. And I really feel strongly that some of the exceptions that are in the land use, they kind of, some of them are pretty vague and they could create a big loophole. So I just wanted to make my statements on that.
Thank you.
That is why we are going to have that discussion this evening on that specific chapter, Bernice. And Mr. Leroy, I'd have to ask that you not make comments during our meeting, please. So does anyone else on the committee have any comments on the meeting minute or meeting notes from April 8th and April 21st? Hearing none, could someone motion that we approve them as they were provided?
This is Brian. I move that we accept the April 8th notes as provided.
And 21st, I hope?
And 21st, yes, excuse me.
Thank you.
I'd be happy to second that.
Thank you, John. So we have a motion and a second to accept the notes as presented for April 8th and April 21st. All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Hearing none, it is so moved, and we will move on.
Thanks, Rob. I just have this slide up here to refresh everybody's view or understanding of the planning area.
And while we have this map here, I think, Melissa, it'd be a great opportunity for us to point out where those activity centers specifically are.
I will, and I actually have another slide that's a closer view, and I'll show you that in a minute. And I've actually numbered them, kind of anticipating that we needed to do this. I'll just go through these real quick, and then we'll look at it again. So can you see my cursor?
Yes.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then there's a closer slide. So this just actually shows the location of the activity center. And this one is out Cosnino, right close to the interstate interchange. It's all commercial zoning. And I will just read the definition again of rural activity center. It's a centralized, concentrated area of locally oriented commercial, public, and semi-public services and activity centers. Rural activity centers are identified by area plans and the Flagstaff Regional Plan.
Melissa, this is Bernice. What about the half-mile radius?
So that's a great question, Bernice. Yeah. And I actually have another even closer image slide that we'll look at in a minute. But the half-mile radius is meant to be, and it's actually a quarter mile, that's meant to represent a walkable distance. So it's a pedestrian shed. It's just meant to show that people that live within a quarter mile can walk there. It's a walkable distance. That's all it's meant to show. So yeah. But I have some additional images later on, right before we talk about the land use goals and policies that I think will help to better explain that. And Rob, if you wanted to, we could go on to this next agenda item.
Sure, yep. Next slide. So when we first met, one of the things we did right off the bat was to establish our basic operating principles. And it was at those meetings those first meetings or two that we defined how it was we would conduct our work, how we would treat each other, how we would solicit and use public input throughout the process. It was at those meetings that we insisted we have both public input periods at the beginning and the end of each meeting. And this is the initial list that we had. The edit that's been done here is the supervisors for both District 4 and District 2 have changed since this document was originally created. So Supervisor Begay being District 4 and Supervisor Vasquez being District 2 now. And this is a continuation of this. The items you see highlighted in yellow there are additions that we've made here within the last month or two. Is that correct, Melissa?
There are updates to this, yes.
Yeah, indicating that we have to have a quorum of committee members in order to hold a meeting and to make decisions. And that that we're committed to making sure everyone feels safe, that we are productive, that we're a welcoming environment that respects everyone's opinions, and make sure that we do our best to show that to everyone every way that we can.
And then Rob, the last slide, this instead of highlighting everything, all of this slide would be new to the operating principles.
So I don't think any of us expected we would still be zooming this long into the process, but since we are, it was thought to be a good idea to go ahead and establish some basic policies that relate to the unique nature of having to do Zoom-based meetings. And so these principles were also agreed upon by the committee as to how we conduct our meetings and how we ensure that we comply with those, being respectful and ensuring everyone feels they can be participating in these meetings.
So, and Rob, just to clarify, this slide would be the other addition that the committee would want to discuss tonight and make sure that this resonates with everybody and is acceptable to add to the operating principles.
Okay. Yeah, everyone had been provided this. I guess we haven't actually voted on it. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. So committee members, hopefully you've all had a chance to review this. And if anyone has any thoughts on whether this is or is not a good plan, and if there is anything that we need to change regarding it, we'd like to hear that now.
This is Brian. I have one quick question, and that is, has there anything been added to this virtual meeting list that we have not been following in our previous virtual meetings? Is there any new information there that we haven't already covered?
Brian, this is Melissa. No, I think this pretty well summarizes what we've been doing. It just puts it in writing.
Yeah, this just codifies what we've been doing.
Right.
So
that's what I wanted to assure myself was happening.
Any other committee members have any thoughts or comments on our updated principles, operating principles? If not, I guess we'll go ahead and get a motion to adopt these as presented here tonight. From someone?
This is Brian. I move that we adopt the virtual meeting update principles to our committee operating plan.
Again, I will second that.
Thank you, Brian and John. Any additional comments? All in favor of adopting as proposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we adopt these as presented and move on to our next slide. So our next step is this is the heart of our work here, the review of the draft vision statement. Some of you may remember that in the last meeting, we did get started on the draft vision statement. But that was quite a while ago, and it was at the very end of a meeting. And so what we're going to start basically where we left off, just a little before where we left off, to make sure we're all on the same page again. So Melissa, if we could go ahead and start with that vision statement, please. Whoop.
Sorry, this slide just points out that there are 4 categories or 4 sections to it. And we can go to the first one then. And that's natural resources. Would you like me to read this, Rob?
Yeah, I was going to suggest that. I know some folks that are joining by phone won't be able to see this. So what we're going to have is Melissa will be so kind as to read each of these statements so that everyone is aware of what it is we're talking about here.
Okay, this is the natural resources, open space, and environment vision statement. Our community's priority for the future of Doney Park, Timberline, Fernwood is to maintain and protect the natural environment, resources, and open spaces that reflect our rural lifestyle and values. We value the biodiversity of our native flora and fauna and the open space that surrounds our community. Access to public lands, trails, and multi-use path systems is important to maintain our quality of life, and we encourage our partners and neighbors to establish safe and legal access easements to these amenities.
Any committee thoughts on this particular statement? All right.
Nope.
Next.
Okay, so the next one is community character and values. Our community character is influenced by our rich cultural and historic diversity, natural environment and open space, expansive vistas, dark skies, the natural quiet and rural lifestyle. The diversity of our community is reflected in our history and place names: Doney Park, Timberline, Fernwood, Winona, Cosnino. Our closely connected community reflects our independent lifestyle, recognizes our reliance on each other for social support, and strives to be inclusive, fair, and safe. Our community character is reflected in large lots, a variety of building styles, and a recognition of geographic differences that reflects the country living we value.
Any committee thoughts on statement 2? Hearing none, we'll go on to 3.
And this is land use, growth, development, and partnerships. Our area plan supports responsible land use and planned growth that maintains our rural lifestyle and character. We embrace a future that accommodates new residents while ensuring that new development is integrated into our community in a manner that respects cultural and historic resources, supports community values and aesthetics, and considers the environment and long-term viability of natural habitat and water resources.
Any comments on vision statement 3?
This is Bernice. I would like to talk about limiting the number of new residents. We can't provide homes for everybody that wants to come here. And I think it would be a good idea to add the word limited before new residents.
That accommodates limited new residents?
Yes, because there's going to be turnover anyway, because people come and go. But for all the people that want to live here, you know, I know what it was like when I came here. And it was difficult even back then, which was almost 50 years ago. And I just, you know, I don't think that because someone wants to move here, that we have to provide them a place to live. If it is going to ruin the area that we live in, if it's going to create density and traffic and jeopardize our water supply.
This is Liz. Bernice, are you meaning like you're worried about the long-term viability? Somehow we've got to connect closer to these two, because at the end it says, consider our environment, long-term viability of natural habitat and water resources. So somehow we've got to connect them that they're closer. Because if you just put limited in there, that doesn't, I mean, I know it's wordsmithing, but it accommodates limited. Like it doesn't look like we're inclusive. I don't know. I understand what you're talking about, but we've just got to consider about words.
Well,
so
I've got to add to this myself. I think adding the word limited it essentially gives it a discriminatory tone.
It's not being inclusive,
limiting
right?
Population is not an idea that is commensurate with American values and private property rights. In addition to that, what criteria do you use to define limited? So I would be dead set against adding something like that.
Well, so
embrace it.
So Bernice, so from what I gather from all of this is that we're not talking about providing a place for somebody to be, but just that if somebody can find the opportunity to be here, that we are an inclusive community. So, and I wanted to ask you, when you say limit the number of residents, are you talking about people or home?
I'm talking about limiting the density. That's all. Just because our environment will not be the same if we overload the area with residents, our water table will be polluted. We're all on septics.
I feel like in the past when this has come up, we've had some really smart folks on the committee here that aren't me explain how we're already sort of under some limitations the way it is with the available property and also the kind of acres
as far as how many acres a lot has to be. So there are already sort of those safeties built in, right?
But
With
there
the way
are
the community.
No, but there aren't.
That's a question because I just want to make sure.
Right.
And
it will come up with this. It will come up with tonight's land use because there are a couple of paragraphs. This is Liz that actually makes you question the limitation, and then if someone wants it higher up, then they can change the limitation.
And the other thing is, you would have to define. You'd have to define density also.
Well, I think this is Brian. I think this is actually addressed in the limitation of the size of the lots, because there can only be one home and perhaps, you know, an additional dwelling for grandma on the lot. So I don't think that this is about limiting residents. It's actually about what's the carrying capacity within the lot sizes that we have here in Doney Park region.
That's what I was talking about. I know you all have talked about that in the past, and that better helped me clarify.
But how do we put that in there?
Can I jump in here?
Yes.
Can I jump in?
Yes.
This is Dave. It's Dave Browning. I don't see anything in here that says that we have to accommodate new residents in a manner that respects cultural and historic resources, supports community values and aesthetics, and considers the environment and long-term viability of natural habitat and water resources. So if somebody wants to move in, but we don't have the water, we just say no.
Yeah.
I would add that the first sentence there, it says growth that maintains our rural lifestyle and character. High density development does not maintain our rural lifestyle and character. So, you know, Bernice, you may not think we're stating that strongly enough there,
right.
But I think we have an opportunity to do that even more strongly as we get into the actual policies.
Yeah. Could we just take out new? Why don't we just say we accommodate residents? Don't say new. And then if you make it here, I don't know. I think she doesn't want it too welcoming, like we incur the masses, and get both sides. But how about we just take it out? Accommodates residents while ensuring new development is integrated.
I like that. I also like, instead of limited, we could use a reasonable number of new residents.
Or not even go there.
I don't think you can say that.
I like Liz's idea. Take it out the new.
Yeah, Liz has got the right idea with that. If you're going to do anything that implies limitation, new, the word should come out, perhaps. And one other thing about it is that the zoning ordinance itself is quite a limitation on growth and expansion in Doney Park, as well as the regional plan and the comprehensive plan. And of course, that is, you know, those are the overriding documents that we have to deal with.
John, I know that. Go ahead, Bruce.
I have a question about when this is voted on by the Board of Supervisors, can it change the, change the existing county comprehensive plan? What would be overriding when this is voted on?
Bernice, this is Melissa. So when this is voted on, this is all that will be voted on. If there is through this process, a possible change to the regional plan or the comprehensive plan that somehow is needed based on this area plan, which so far we haven't talked about anything that needs to be changed, then those would be additional items that the board would need to vote on. So, but as the work that's been done so far right now, what would be voted on would be this area plan document. And remember, it also goes to the Planning Commission at a public hearing, and then the Planning Commission makes a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, so what you're saying is if there are changes down the road, like if we took out some of the exemptions that would increase density, then they would have to have a separate item if it conflicts with the other plans.
If there would be that. If I understand your question correctly, then yes, there would be, if it's a different document that would need to be changed, that's a different item that they would have to approve or act on. Yeah, we'll have to get more information about where you're seeing these exemptions so that we can understand where you saw those.
Okay. Are we at a consensus that we could take out that word new in the draft vision?
Yeah. This is
yes.
This is Brian.
So. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, John. In addition to taking out new, I'm going to suggest we read, we embrace a future that accommodates residents while ensuring that additional development is integrated into our community. Because that would be any development that is currently on developed land or undeveloped land.
Actually, I think from the standpoint of a person on the Planning and Zoning Commission, I'd say new and additional, new or additional, either one would be more appropriate, because you've got new and then additional development is an ongoing part of the planning, zoning, and land use process.
That's a good point, John. I like that.
But if something's added, isn't it new? I mean, I don't know. I guess I don't know the PZ lingo, because new, but then again, abutment versus adjacent, we learned those two. New versus additional. If I put on a garage, it's an additional garage, and it's a new garage because it wasn't there before. Right? So I don't get that new and additional. I think they're the same, John. Could you explain that a little bit?
I think this is a little more specific in saying additional, because you may have an existing, say, commercial use, and you're going to, add something to it.
But adding is new.
Already existing use. And I don't really think you consider that new development.
Oh, you have an establishment, you're enlarging it.
And you bet.
But
you're
it's
adding
not
an awning that has to be approved for building, or an additional storage area, that sort of thing. It doesn't really change the use.
Okay, so I think we're pretty well into this conversation, and I've heard, I think, a majority of support for removing the word new in front of resident. And after new, prior to development, we will add new and new and additional slant. So it'll be new slant additional development. Is that what I'm hearing as the committee's desire here?
You got it absolutely right, Rob.
Yeah, I agree. This is Dave.
Okay, so Melissa, we can go ahead and get those in your notes so that can be updated.
Yep, got those.
This is Brian. I agree as well.
All right. Moving on to vision statement number 4. Melissa, you're going to read for us?
Sorry, I thought I unmuted. Okay, transportation. The transportation system in Doney Park, Timberline, Fernwood integrates and connects multimodal facilities for transit, pedestrian, bicycle, and equestrian users throughout and beyond the planning area. Our future envisions transportation corridors that are safe and accessible for wildlife, motorists, and all non-motorized users. Enhanced opportunities for transit and commuter options are possible at key locations throughout the planning area.
Any committee comments on vision statement number 4?
That's a dang good vision statement. That's
Can we have an example of the enhanced opportunities?
Yes, I will give. Can I say this, Melissa?
Sure.
Okay. Of course. Enhanced opportunities of transit means at this time right now, at the activity centers, there's only park and ride out here. But for transit, it's not up and running yet. It always comes to surface and then it's down because we don't have the funding. Because transit out here, it's not the numbers. I always thought it was a magic number. It's not the magic number, it's the magic bucks, and we don't have it. But enhanced opportunities would be like a transit. Another thing is that these activity centers are also in the future, and we're going to have it soon, hopefully, that it's going to be connected to trails for walkers, cyclists, and equestrian, that we can connect to different neighborhoods. Right now, they are a lot of social trails, but they are connected because I've been riding my bikes even between Timberline and Fernwood and Doney. They're not the best, but they are potential to grow and be better. I was just out there with friends of the forest, and we were closing down roads that weren't connecting, but just a scattering, and then left open one that was actually, it was not good, but it did connect to the dump, from Fernwood to the dump road to Doney Park, that you could ride your bike or your horse through the whole area. And it's going to be coming because different non-motorized transportation is it's big, and Flag wants to be part of that. And Flag Initiative Trails is really pushing it. And that's why that old trail system, Bernice, that was closed from 2010 is rebirthing. So does that answer the question? It's going to be connecting our neighborhoods, but also connecting to town. Does that make sense? And it's going to be mainly at the activity centers, these connections.
Thank you, Liz. Bernice, did that answer your question?
Yes.
All right. Any other questions from the committee members on vision statement number 4 on transportation? All right, then we can move on. So this is our overall schedule. For those of you that have been not joined us in the past, this is kind of where we've been, what we're doing, and where we're going. Tonight, we're going to be talking in detail about the land use growth and development chapter. And I think that leaves just our transportation and circulation chapter for us to finish after tonight. So moving on.
And Rob, these are just some a couple slides that I put in here to kind of give us a primer for jumping into the land use discussion. I just wanted to give a little bit more of a background in terms of some planning language, and really because there's so much discussion about density. So I just put a definition in here of density, and this is actually straight out of our subdivision ordinance. And I'll go ahead and read it. And I think there are a few people who are not muted. If you wouldn't mind muting, that would be helpful. So when you think about density, density is the total number of dwelling units permitted on an acre of land, exclusive of streets and rights of way that restrict the surface use of the property in question. It's a bit of a technical definition there, but so it's a total number of dwelling units permitted on an acre of land. So that's just our overall definition of density. And then for this plan, for the document that you all have been looking at, there are a couple of policies that I just wanted to provide a little bit more information about. And just kind of a summary of some of the policy details. And so, Rob, I think you dropped out. Are you back in now, Rob? Sorry, I think Rob is joining us again.
By cell. I think one of our vision statements should be reliable internet connections.
Wish we could make that happen. So land use policy 2, which we'll get right into, I just put together a little summary of the policy details. So there are a number of criteria and benefits that when a residential zone change would be proposed, that this policy would point a potential land use change too. So in other words, the policy contains criteria that lists benefits to the community that would need to be met in order for a residential zone change to occur. There is in this policy a requirement that all lots be a minimum of 1 acre or greater. There is a policy in here that density increase should not exceed 20% for 10 or more lots. That where a zone change was requested, that it be of equal or greater size to adjacent parcels. So in other words, if adjacent parcels are 1 acre in size, then it'd be 1 acre in size. If adjacent parcels are 2 acre in size, and they be remain at 2 acres in size. And then finally, if there are more than 10 acres and a residential zone change was requested, then the criteria, this policy would direct a developer to use our planned residential development and particular standards in order to create that development. We'll look at those details in a minute. And I just wanted to point out too that land use policy 3 is specifically addressing subdivisions. And the criteria and the standards that are in your draft mirror and complement the county's subdivision ordinance. And it does encourage this idea of integrated conservation design. And I did have a slide here to kind of show what that looks like, because I know that that's been a question with the committee. And what's on the left, it kind of shows what's called conventional development, where there is no clustering. And you can see, and I apologize, it's a little bit blurry, the green area would be what's left over by way of, in this image, it would be most likely some sort of floodplain, for instance, that was left undeveloped. Integrated conservation design keeps the same number of lots or parcels, allows smaller lots, but maintains much more open space. So I wanted to throw this image into the tonight's presentation, just to hopefully better describe what that means.
And this is Liz. And Melissa, I really love this vision. And like I think Bernice was talking about, this open space green and clustering the houses, I get it. But when we go back to the residential goals, LU2 kind of scares me because it says, it's going to be like this, we'll do this, this, this. But if it's decided that the residential zone, we have to change the residential zone changes due to the benefits or strongly encourage of the community. And I just want to know who makes that decision for the community. Is it the Board of Supervisors or the exact? If we need more density out here, would they change this clustering and put more houses in? I think that's what Bernice was concerned about before. And we'll get to that later tonight, but this perfectly demonstrates the point that some of us are concerned about when you have these green open spaces. If the people in charge, which I know John says now planning and zoning is not going to let that happen, but things change and that these open spaces would get condensed and then there'd be more density out here.
So what I'm hearing then is that there's a worry that for instance, the open space shown on the image on the right at some point then would be turned over and rezoned for more development. Is that correct?
If that was needed, because in our own statement in LU2, it talks about that. But we can change these zones plans, residential planning, if there's a need in the community and if this is a want in the community. I don't have the exact words, but I wrote down LU2 because that wording kind of say like, okay, who's going to decide that need in the community? And I know, so. Well,
let's think about this for 1 second here, this image right here, because if this had been, sorry, I had to do something. If this had been the parcel that was subject to a rezoning, and if it had been rezoned, and just think about the image on the right then. And if
it's beautiful, I love it. If it stays
so
like
if it had been rezoned, and then so rezonings for residential properties, when they're more than 5 lots, are going to be a subdivision, right? And so if it had been a subdivision, then there would be 2 actions that the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors would consider: the rezoning and the subdivision design. So in the end, if a rezoning had been approved, it would be, this would have been a planned residential development. That's actually a zoning district. And this would have been the subdivision approved with it. So those green spaces would have been approved as part of that subdivision. To go back and rezone that would require completely new public hearings. It would require a completely new re-subdivision. Most likely would not happen because in the end, it would probably not comply with the goals and policies of your area plan. So those are very formal processes when a developer comes in and requests a rezoning and a subdivision, because that's something that cannot easily be converted back. If this, if all the calculations worked out where the density met the standard needed for this required shape here. So, if we were in person, I'd be I'm pointing at my screen and you can't see my fingers. Does that make sense? And does that help?
Yeah, it does. I just keep on thinking in the future. Well, I guess it doesn't matter, no matter what we say in the future. If the power to be wants to change things, it's going to change.
Well, it would actually have to go through public hearing process. And if it did not meet the area plan goals and policies, the chances of something like that changing again would be not high.
Okay. Well, but I just think that, go ahead, Bernice.
Yeah.
Because Bernice, and if I could say one more thing, because otherwise the image on the left is certainly what could be approved. Okay, I mean, that could also be approved. It depends on what a developer would choose, how they would choose to design it. The density is exactly the same when you look at number of lots.
One of the things that scares me is in our plan as it is right now, it says the open space gained by this type of development, meaning the clustering, may be utilized to meet the benefits mentioned above, which are those 6 exemptions, which could include other valued public amenities supported by the community. And
that's what I didn't read it. Good deal.
And providing additional housing opportunities for
yes.
a range of incomes and household sizes. That could be multi-unit, that could be anything. That would be a loophole.
Well, let me try to explain.
That extra land that's all that beautiful green could be developed into.
Thank you, Bernice.
Yeah,
you found
Bernice,
the paragraph.
actually, that's not how that's intended to be utilized, because those are the criteria that are used when a rezoning would be considered. So those are the quote benefits.
What it reads, though. That's what it reads. The open space gained could be used, may be utilized to meet the benefits mentioned above, which would be those exemptions.
Hey, Bernice, I think you're kind of jumping ahead of us here a little bit. Melissa, I think, was presenting these as kind of informational, so we would better understand some of the detail of what we're going to be talking about. The language that you're just referencing is exactly what we're going to be reviewing tonight, and I believe deserves considerable attention.
Okay.
So I want your opinions, but I think we need to make sure they're where we're talking about that specific language, if that's okay.
Thank you, Bernice. And I'm sorry, Rob, I'm the one that started because I said, oh, Melissa, I've got this
always your
problem
fault
when I view this. I know, always a problem, but you know. Okay, so we'll be quiet till we get to the section because it is going to be brought up, I'm sure, to nauseum. So, okay, good.
Well, I just wanted to put some images up to try to help explain what.
This is a beautiful image. This is great. This is wonderful. Thank you.
And then there are just a couple more images, and then we'll just jump right off and get into the document. And oops, sorry. On this one, then. This actually shows there were questions about rural activity centers, and this is an image showing you know, just obviously hypothetical activity center and what that would look like in a rural setting. So the radius, a circle, is really to be what this is. It's a pedestrian walkable circle. And the activity center, though, is the commercial land at the intersections. So the key is at the intersections. So this is kind of an image, and this is actually from the regional plan, because the regional plan has done a nice job of illustrating this way. And then just to show you some additional views, then this is kind of again, a hypothetical view of what that might look like in terms of development. Again, you know, you've got some existing commercial development at the centers, the activity centers that we've talked about. And I did want to also just show a couple of images. Does anyone have any comments on this? Questions before I just go to the last image?
Yes, I'd like to say one thing about the quarter-mile walkability radius. That is something that we have addressed in a case before the Planning and Zoning Commission, and it specifically applied more to a suburban area rather than something like our rural areas. It is simply a means of providing some guidance when you evaluate the use that is being asked for in that activity center, which may be rather small based on the zoning available. So it's more relevant for suburban or even an urban environment. You really keep that in mind.
Yeah, and the circles are shown around the rural activity centers as well, and there may not be much to walk to.
Melissa, could we look at the clustering slide again? Okay, that clustering slide shows one dwelling per lot on that. And didn't the zoning changes passed by the County Board of Supervisors allow for an additional additional dwelling unit? So that slide on the right could potentially have twice as many dwellings on those lots as is showing now.
Well, both images could, because an accessory dwelling is particular for an accessory dwelling.
Yes, I already feel like the county has already done a huge amount to increase density in our areas by allowing each one of us, as we are right now, to put another dwelling on our properties. So if we do this, then allow that open space gained to be put into additional density, I kind of think that's too much for our water system and too much for our the aquifer, the pollution and the septics and all that type of thing, and traffic and noise and character. And
Bernice,
we
both
won't
of
be
these
rural anymore.
Yeah, both of these drawings, Bernice, would result in the exact same density.
Right, so there should be 2 dwellings on each one of those lots, not 1.
In both drawings.
Right.
Yes.
And I just want to touch on that for a bit, because the accessory dwelling has some very specific standards in terms of size. So they are limited, and and also as far as distance from the main house, but that's a zoning code technicality we could talk about later.
But since they're allowed to be rentals and VRBOs and Airbnbs, that could increase traffic and everything and density.
Bernice, you're absolutely right. And unfortunately, I think what you're talking about is outside the scope of what the area plan can address.
Well, I would like to eliminate that provision that the preferred implementation strategy be clustering. I would like to eliminate that because it creates too much potential for increased density later on.
Okay, when we get to that section, let's make sure we have that conversation.
Okay, thank you.
These were just some images that I thought might help inform the conversation. And then I just wanted to show 2 of these images. The one on the left and the one on the top are, oh my gosh, it's the RV park right off of 89. And I do not remember the name right now. My apologies. But this actually has this is an apartment. So it's a little bit of a mixed use type of development right in your neighborhood. And they've got a store below and there's an apartment above. So that's on commercial property. And then this down in the bottom right just was something interesting that I thought might be, it's up in Greenhaven. And what this is, it's obviously a storage unit. So it's on commercial zoning, but they have the caretaker's quarters built into the development. So when we talk about mixed use for rural activity centers, this is the type of images that would be anticipated.
Okay.
So with that, then I'm going to stop sharing this and get into the document. Did we need to take a quick break? Or do you want to jump right into it?
A break would be nice.
All right, we'll take a 5-minute break at 6:40. We'll be back at 6:45. I'm sure you're going to make that bigger, right?
Nope.
Thank you.
Tell me when.
That's good right there. And we're starting up at the top, right?
Well, we thought we would start on 2.
I thought we agreed yesterday we were going to start
on 1. We can start on 1 if you like. I mean, this is the very beginning again.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you could just scroll to the very top of the document, just so that when folks come back, they see the beginning of, you know, what we're doing here. Thank you.
Hey, Rob, it's Jay. How you doing?
Jay, you're breaking up pretty bad. But thank you for joining us.
I'm having a hard time connecting to Wi-Fi here. I'll give you a call probably next week.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, it's 6:45 on my clock. I hope, do we need to double check? Do we have a quorum back, or do we need to check that?
Hold on, we'll take a look.
Here.
Who was that?
That was Evelyn, I think.
Yes, it was.
John, are you back? Liz Baldwin is here. Thank you.
I'm back. That's
Monica's
Monica.
here. Awesome.
Dave Browning's here.
Sailor?
Sailors.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just had to hit unmute. I am here.
Perfect. Then we have an adequate number here. I'm sure Brian is back. So, all right. So we are now going to go into detail with the land use growth and development chapter. It is currently in its draft form. We have not reviewed this in detail yet. The suggested chapter outline is shown here. We're going to start with the residential goals, and our objective here is, as we go through this document, if committee members have thoughts about what is in the document, whether we should have any changes, to please share those with us here today so that we can get this document updated real time as Melissa types away with our changes. So the document starts with these residential goals. The first one, the rural character area is preserved by encouraging. I was thinking a better word there would be ensuring new residential development maintains existing gross density. So rather than encouraging, let's ensure that it does. Does anybody?
I like that. Ensure. That's a good word.
Okay. And the rest of the sentence will have to be wordsmithed a little bit there to make it all work. We don't have to get into the detail of that. The key there is we're not encouraging, we're ensuring that it does.
Rob, this is Brian. I like your edit.
Good job.
Thank you. And then let's see. The second sentence there, I suggested we change it slightly too. I'd like to see it say all new development should remain on private lands, to make that a little bit more clear that we really mean what we're saying here. So all new development should remain on private land. Makes it really clear exactly what we're trying to say.
Yeah, I'd certainly agree with you on that one, Rob.
This is Brian. I agree also.
And I'm all about discussion on this. If anybody wants to dissent, please do. Any other thoughts on the goal, on that first goal there? All right, we'll move on to the residential policies then. Each of these, land use policy number 1 here, stating that we want to keep that large lot size zoning retained except as described below. And that's where we're going to have the fun conversation, I think.
Yep, that's.
All right, anybody have a problem with land use 1? All right, we'll move on to land use number 2. And we'll read through that. I don't think we need to read it. Well, residential zoning changes, especially those that would result in increased density, should not be approved unless based on the criteria described in this section. The applicant should demonstrate compliance with the provisions of this policy. So I think this, Bernice, is where you were talking about, you know, what are the loopholes here is kind of what we're talking about here, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So we're open for discussion here now. The first one is the one you were talking about, that clear and significant, or significant and clear benefits to the planning area.
So Rob, if I could, I suggest that we read, so LU2, then there are sub policies A and then 1, 2, 3 below it.
Right.
So this is specific to residential zone changes. And I just turn the view so you can see it without the track changes, if that's easier to read.
I think it's easier for everyone to read, yeah.
Okay. All right. So the sub policy then under that first land use policy would be zone changes may be considered if significant and clear benefits to the planning area residents have been identified and are supported by planning area residents. Such benefits may include, and then these are the following benefits.
I would like to add one word in there. I would like to say by the majority of the planning area residents.
How would you assess that?
I would leave that up to planning and zoning and the county supervisors to figure that out. But the way it's written right now,
on that. I don't think that you have an adequate means of making that determination at either the Planning and Zoning Commission level or at the Board of Supervisors. That would require a vote. Well,
John, I think we have, yeah, there's public meetings, and if the majority of the public comment, received at the P&Z Commission meeting is in support of, then that I'd be okay with. But the way it was written, I felt a single person supporting it would have met that criteria.
Well, sometimes that's all that shows up before the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. So
and if that's the case, then we've met that requirement.
And I'll tell you what, if you get a large number of people show up, as a matter of fact, your own use permit is a good example of that. We're in favor of Timberline firearms. So that was really taken into consideration, and it always is. Of course, you know, future planning and zoning commissions and boards of supervisors may not look at it that way. They may look at it in their view may be that we're doing what we think is the best thing for the community, regardless of who has shown up for the meetings and given their opinions, whether it's a majority of those or not. It's probably best, I would suggest leaving it like it is.
Okay. Any other thoughts from other committee members?
John? This is Brian. Excuse me, Liz. So I want to note that it's already stating planning area residents. So it's inclusive of everyone that lives in the Doney Park, Fernwood, Timberline area. And my issue with either adding the majority or just say supported by the planning area residents is that you have no way to quantify it. And we have an excellent turnout for the survey, and yet I wouldn't guarantee you that we had a majority of people agreeing because we had a number of people who didn't respond. So I tend to go with John Ruggles on this. I think we're better off leaving it a bit more vague rather than saying the majority.
Okay.
I agree.
Liz?
Yeah, go ahead.
Gee, Rob, you're too easy to get along with.
Well, no. Liz, did you have a comment too there, Dave?
Yes. Yeah.
Go ahead.
You're muted.
Dave, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I agree with taking it out. And if there's enough people that show up and say, I don't want that, then I think
okay,
that's going to speak for itself.
I'm sorry, wait.
I can see where Rob is coming from as far as the majority of the people who may attend, and as in our survey, the majority of the people who respond to the survey, but not the majority of the people in the area. So I can kind of see where you're coming from, Rob. It just worded so that it can get confusing.
And I think
I don't understand why we couldn't keep the density and still protect these environmentally sensitive areas and archaeological sites without increasing the density. Why do we have to give someone a loophole because they have an environmentally sensitive area or habitat? Why couldn't we just keep it the same density?
Bernice, I can't keep up with you. You've jumped ahead of us again.
Oh.
I think we're still just on A right now. And
okay.
It appears the consensus is that we should remove my suggested edit. Unless anybody objects to that, let's remove that.
And John, this is Liz. Sorry, I was on mute before when Rob said, "Go ahead and talk, Liz." John, this is a question for you and all the committee members. Did you say a few minutes ago that it didn't matter if the P&Z thinks it benefits the committee? Did I hear this wrong? And there are clear benefits that if even no one shows up at the meeting or there's no comments, they would proceed with it and make it go? Did you say that, John, that sometimes if the committee thinks that there's a clear benefit and nobody shows up?
Yes.
Yes?
As a matter of fact, that tends to be far more typical of zoning cases than you would ever think, because in the past, we have had cases where no one offers public comment. The only thing we're looking at or we get is the staff analysis and the opinions and the opinions of those who are on the commission. And the same thing occurs at the Board of Supervisors.
Okay.
And if that is not true about the Board of Supervisors, I would encourage Supervisor Vasquez to correct me on that. But I've been to enough Board of Supervisors meetings also to say that we all tend to operate in the same manner and think very similarly about how this works.
Okay. Because I was thinking if there were issues that came up, like about density, and it just wasn't well publicized or not everybody got the invite and they didn't show up, and there was a group on a committee that wanted to push this, they could without community input because it just maybe wasn't advertised. I'm not saying our survey was like that, but I'm saying in future for density, when things get tight, and things are getting tight now, I'm just saying it was odd. I didn't think you could move on things unless you didn't have at least some comment, community input. I didn't know that could just go. Okay.
Yes, you can, but that's why I'm a very strong advocate of community input because it can make a tremendous difference in how these things are evaluated.
And keep in mind, these are all publicly noticed hearings with mailings going out. The properties are posted. It's posted on the websites.
Yeah. But so many people, like we all say, didn't get the survey.
All right. So I think it's satisfied with A, and we're moving on to item number 1 so we can catch up with Bernice. And Bernice, I think you had a thought about item number 1. Could you share that?
Well, I don't see why environmentally sensitive areas could not be protected and not have to reduce density.
So if I could just jump in here again. So A is the precursor to 1 through 6. And this says again, zone changes may be considered if significant and clear benefits to the planning area residents have been identified. The benefits may include. So this is what the commission would look at in terms of, are any of these benefits 1 through 6 being provided by this zone change? So it doesn't mean that environmentally sensitive areas would not be protected if a zone change is protecting those environmentally sensitive areas. That would be one of the benefits of the zone change. Likewise, if it's preserving arc sites or geologic features, if it's providing public recreational trails, if it's providing recreational parks or facilities or other valued amenities. And then it was adding this last one here for providing additional housing opportunities for a range of incomes and household sizes. So these would be the benefits that the commission and the board of supervisors would look at as being provided with a requested zone change. And then below this down here is where it gets into the particular standards for that. Does that help?
Yes, I understand that, but I just don't see why those benefits couldn't be, at least the first 3 couldn't be, why the benefits couldn't be provided without increasing density.
It has to do with the developer's value. Is that what it is? Like that they say you can't take this last acre because migration passes through this envelope, let's say, or we found an archae site. So then they say, well, we'll make you can still build your homes, but you can have 2 closer together. Is that why? Because then they don't, because didn't that what happened downtown with the takers, right? You know, when Flagstaff got smaller or we outgrew, and then they said, okay, takers right. If I can't go out, I'm going to go up and you can't stop me, because we didn't have any laws downtown at the time to stop the building up. So they're saying if this pointed to developers, Melissa?
So absolutely, this is only for somebody requesting a zone change.
Okay.
And not everybody has to request a zone change. There's some vacant land that is in Doney Park that would not require a zone change, but could be subdivided. Subdivision is a public hearing process, but if there is land that's currently zoned for 2.5 acres, that could come in, and none of this then would apply to that. This is only applicable to a zone change. And, you know, any property owner in Doney Park has the right to request a zone change. Whether or not it's approved is a whole nother matter, and that's where these policies are looked at.
So Melissa, could you tell me if I'm right here? Those 2 different density drawings that you showed us earlier, you don't have to go back to them, would be an example of where a developer, or it could have been on a much smaller scale, just an individual would say, I would like to change my zoning requirements without increasing the density in order to protect environmentally sensitive lands that run through my property. Is that where this would apply?
So again, it would apply just to a requested zone change.
Right.
And yeah, that would be an option. The integrated conservation design, that cluster design is not required. It's an option. It's an option that's available.
But it would be this would provide that justification for considering that zone change.
Sure. I mean, if it's an area, for instance, say it's a big property along the Rio de Flag, and you know the developer wanted 20 lots, for instance, in there, and saw that the Rio de Flag was important to preserve for wildlife corridor, then, you know, if the zone change, if it was requested zone change, then that would be, you know, they could use perhaps that cluster design to permanently protect that part of the corridor, and, you know, do that through the zone change and the subdivision process. So, and these would be some of the benefits then, you know, if it doesn't, this does not say all of these need to be provided, just some of the benefits may include. So
this is a way to incentivize protection of assets that we feel are important that might not otherwise be protected.
I would say it's more than incentivizing, it's requiring that a zone change provides some benefit. And these are the lists of benefits.
Well, no, I'm saying incentivizing the developer to protect those resources by giving them a change in zoning that might otherwise offset their
you could look at it that way. You could look at it that way.
This says especially those that would increase density.
Where does it say that?
It says that in LU2 period, residential zone changes, especially those that would result in increased density,
should not be improved unless based on the criteria.
But then you have all those 6 unless statements that could increase density.
So again, you know, a developer or property owners have the right to request a change in zoning that would increase density. And what this says is that those zone changes should not be approved unless some benefit, one of these, is provided.
And my theory is that we could still provide benefits without increasing density.
But what, Bernice, what if a property owner has some land that they want to request a zone change? The county, we have to accept that application for consideration. You know, that's simply a property rights matter, and you know, whether or not it's approved is where these policies apply. Does that make sense? So
the question for our committee is, of these 6 items, do we believe our community values these things enough that a potential increase in density could occur in order to protect those things?
And I guess another way to think of it is, what are the benefits? If there is a zone change requested that results in increased density, there are occasions where there's a down zoning where it goes the other way. But if there is a request for a zone change that does result in increased density, what are the criteria that you would want that to be evaluated against? What are the benefits that you would want to see? And remember, the standards that have been written below still have that minimum net lot size of 1 acre or greater. So this is, when we get down into B, is where those additional details are laid out.
So this is just so that it can be considered.
Mm-hmm.
And then it has to meet the criteria below.
And it might help if we wanted to look at B to think about what that actually means then in terms of how zone changes.
Let's
Melissa, before you go there.
Yeah.
This is Brian. I'm looking at these, and 1 through 5, I don't see how they would increase the density, because they're all providing for some additional space for some service or protection of habitat or environment. The only one that could possibly, that I see that could possibly increase density is number 6, A6. That is, provide additional housing opportunities for a range of incomes and household sizes. Now, I'm not objecting to this, but I think we've got to look at that in context to what else has been said within the document, that increasing the density should not be approved unless, you know, it meets these benefits, and that has been stressed in other locations as well. So I think that we've got to look at this in a larger context and not just through the microscope.
Brian, are you suggesting that item 6 may not be applicable in this case?
I'm not sure. I have thought that, but I go back and forth on it. I understand that there are people that are wanting to move into this area. It is certainly more affordable than trying to live downtown. So I'm in a catch-22 on that one.
This is Evelyn. I kind of agree. I think that it's not exactly, if we were to ask the residents, I think that would be the one thing that they would not see as a benefit. I think most of the people, the residents, the planning area residents would not support number 6.
Yeah, I'm going to come in on the side of Evelyn on this one after thinking about it and listening to Brian as well. I don't think that is appropriate at this point, at this place. And the objections that I've heard, I think, make a pretty good case for eliminating that. Because you have essentially what you can do for housing is basically a matter of what is allowed by the zoning ordinance. And the zoning ordinance does not make an effort to provide additional opportunities that may result in higher density, multifamily residential, or anything like that.
Since we're on number 6 here, are there any other thoughts on number 6 from committee members as to whether we should or should not have it?
Yes.
I would like to comment on number 5 also. Other valued public amenities, that's kind of vague to me. Like,
can we just focus on 6 for right now? Just
okay, we can go back.
Thank you.
Number 6.
Dave, you had something?
Yes, exactly. At the top it says you shouldn't increase density. And then number 6, it provides an opportunity to increase density. That just doesn't make sense to me.
Right, that's why we're taking it out. I didn't think it'd be so easy to whip it out. I mean, I wanted to whip that thing out the first time I read it, but it doesn't blend with the rest of the community desires. So,
all right.
And the survey clearly stated that with 86% of the residents not wanting to see changes in growth and changes in growth and density.
So it's gone.
There seems to be a consensus that item 6 is gone.
Yep.
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah. And since we're making progress working backwards, we'll start on item 5 now here with Bernice. Your thought on that one?
Rob, can I interject real quick on?
Yes, sir.
I have a question for Melissa. And this is more for my edification than anything. Was number 6 in the pre-existing 2001 plan?
No, the number 6 was added based on discussion about, there were some initial versions of the vision statement that tracked along with this idea, in terms of being more inclusive and providing some different housing options for people that wanted to move in, but were not, that are currently not available. So that was why this was added. But yep.
I think clearly the last zoning change last year that the county added the additional dwelling units, that freed up a lot of affordable housing too.
So that just to clarify, that has been in our zoning ordinance for many years as far as
but it wasn't allowed to be a rental for many years. It was allowed as like a mother-in-law quarters or a family member.
Yep.
Yeah, that was changed. I'd have to look back and see when that was changed.
But that does add a considerable amount of affordable housing.
But
and still keeps it country and rural. I wasn't even in favor of that, but I didn't know about it. We were never notified that it was even in the zoning changes.
Bernice, your thoughts on item 5?
My thoughts that it is vague, and I would like to delete that also. It's too vague,
Could that be a park? Could that be a...
And just to clarify, that's actually current text. It's just in a bulleted form.
Okay.
Because parks are on number 4. So we're being redundant if you said public amenities, meaning parks, because it's right above on 4. Yeah.
I agree.
So
Well,
we can
public amenity
density if something is a valued public amenity, but what is it valued? I mean, I think the public values less density.
Well, actually, I think
what does it mean?
Public amenity has value to the community, but defining that public amenity is perhaps the crux of what we're talking about here. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a park. It could be a substation for the sheriff. Is that not a public amenity?
Oh.
A school?
A school, a fire station.
Could it be a grocery store?
Well, that's handled under commercial zoning.
Yeah, that wouldn't be public. That's private. That's commercial.
Right. It would be something operated by the county, a fire district, or any other legally established entity such as that.
Could it be a multi-unit homeless shelter?
You could do that. Yes, you could say that, but it all depends on how you define a public amenity. And okay, I'm not too sure that you could define that a public amenity as a homeless shelter. But
well, and I think, John, that would be a group home.
Well, a group home, yes, and then you can't. Well, I'm not sure.
Group homes require a conditional use permit.
Yeah, and I'm not too sure that that would be considered a public amenity in any event. You're limited by code and also federal statute about what you can and can't do relative to group homes.
Let me ask a clarification question. This is Brian. Which agency would determine the awarding public amenity, valued public amenity?
That's an easy one. First, you go to staff, the Planning and Zoning Commission, and probably the Board of Supervisors.
Okay.
And one scenario where this could,
go ahead.
Sorry. Well, one scenario where this could potentially play out, and honestly, I don't know if there's enough vacant land in your planning area for this type of example to work. But if there was a large enough subdivision, and if there was a planned residential zone, sometimes land is set aside for schools, for instance, or as somebody mentioned, a fire station or a substation.
Melissa, I've got a good example of that for you. Something that Supervisor Vasquez has talked about, and that is the 80 acres at Copeland and 89 that is now a detention basin, and the possibility of utilizing that for something like youth soccer field, that sort of thing. That's a public amenity.
That takes water, though.
Not necessarily.
But it's in the detention basin, so they ought to get some water sometime.
Yeah.
Should, you would think so.
But in any
it's
event,
not going to see any water forever.
So let's refocus on item 5 here.
Whether it does or not, that's simply a hypothetical example of what would constitute a public amenity.
Why can't we do that without increasing density, though?
How would you increase density by adding a soccer field in the middle of that 80 acres?
So actually that one would, that land is already set aside, right? But it's an example of a public amenity.
Right, but it could be other land, and it could be a multi-unit housing complex. Or it could, why couldn't we have some of the other valued public amenities without increasing density?
I don't see how this necessarily equates to increasing density.
Doesn't necessarily.
Well, that's because it says especially those that would increase density above, I think is why folks are focusing on that.
Right.
And it seems like what I'm hearing here is there's kind of two schools of thought. In items 1 through 4, we have defined specific things that we do agree may justify consideration for these zoning changes. Item 5, there seems to be some concern about, is it too vague and could it be used in ways that we wouldn't intend it to be used?
Yes.
And I think that's the root of where we've reached right now. And so we as a committee need to decide, do we believe leaving some could call it a loophole, or some could call it an opportunity for things that we may not vision right now? Or should we restrict the Planning and Zoning Commission in the future to only items 1 through 4 as the conditions that would meet the criteria to consider a zoning change?
Well, you wouldn't be restricting the Planning and Zoning Commission because this is a policy document.
Well,
so that is sufficient reason to leave something in there, because it will encourage the debate over this at the commission or at the Board of Supervisors level. And it'll also give the guidance that the staff needs to look at this and say, hey, the commission or the board needs some definition of what a public amenity is.
So item 5 is not encouraging or authorizing anything.
That's right.
Allowing consideration of.
It's providing options.
Yes, exactly.
It says you want to do this, you want to consider this when you look at these things.
But you know what? You gave an example of a soccer field, or a new firehouse, or a new sheriff's satellite area. Mm-hmm. That all falls into provisions of our recreational parks and facilities.
Not if it's a sheriff's substation.
It's a facility.
Facility,
I have a suggestion.
Yes, but it is not a park. If you did that, if you said provision of recreational parks and public facilities, like I just saw typed in, hey, that's enough to eliminate.
That does it. Then 5. You can eliminate 5.
Yep. I'll go along with that.
Somebody was suggesting no, that didn't work.
No, why?
I thought I heard somebody say no.
No, not at all. That works very well.
So that was changed on 4. I can't read that. It's too small.
She added the word public in front of facilities.
And got rid of 5.
Bernice, can you see the screen?
Recreational parks and public facilities. What type of public facilities?
The ones we
I know the ones that we just talked about, but could it end up being multi-unit housing?
That's not a public facility.
No. The county does not subsidize nor build multifamily housing, so then it is not a public facility. You'd have to get a change in legislation to do that, I believe.
Okay.
Would you like to say public safety facilities? Would that narrow it further?
No, don't narrow it.
Okay.
All right.
I like the edit as it is current written.
Denise, can you see the screen though? I want to make sure you can see what we're doing.
Yeah, I'm going to go turn on another light.
Okay.
And I agree with everything that I see right now, which is item 4 was the public and word in there, and the other 2 gone.
I think this is a win for the people who are concerned about high density. A lot of the concerns that I heard in the public statements, I think this really helps. It gives them a win.
I think so.
Yep.
All right, there seems to be consensus that as edited right now, item A 1 through 4 are good to go.
Okay.
Unless anyone strenuously, we're going to move on.
Okay.
So we've just identified the criteria for which zoning changes should be considered.
Right.
Now we're going to talk about, when we stop moving.
Sorry.
There we go. The next paragraph here, B, do we need to read these, or do we want to, how do we want to do that, Melissa?
I can read these in case some people are just on a phone. So this is sub policy B, and this is where the standards for if there is a zone change requested to increase density, these are the standards for those increases. So B reads, increases to the existing zoning density should be rare exceptions and should be approved if no other means are feasible to achieve the desired benefits described above. Such zone changes should meet the following criteria. B1, minimum net lot size of 1 acre or greater should be maintained. B2, net density increase should not exceed 20% for developments greater than 10 acres. for developments greater than 10 lots. B3, lots that are adjacent to residentially zoned land should be of equal or greater size than the adjacent parcels. B4, the proposed change is strongly supported by planning area residents. B5, approval of residential zone changes is through the planned residential development zoning process for development on 10 acres or larger. In addition to requirements specified in section, and there's a number, of the zoning ordinance, and requirements of this policy, the following standards should apply. So maybe I should just stop here.
I think that's a good idea, and we can focus on where we're at here.
So these are the detailed standards for if there is a request for a zone change to increase density, what that should be, what that should comply with, what those standards are.
I've got a suggestion for you here in B. Increases to the existing zoning density are exceptions. They are already regarded as exceptions in the comprehensive and regional plans. So that adds a little emphasis to it, and should be approved only if no other means are feasible to achieve the desired benefits. Adds a little bit more emphasis.
I like it.
And only should only be approved. Yeah, okay.
Is that easier to read?
I'm concerned about the word existing zoning density. What if we have state land sales? We've got a lot of state land around the Turkey Hills area, clear over to I-40. What about Forest Service surrounding different areas? We want to be able to reach out and keep high density housing out of the Forest Service areas and the state land.
Let me just tell you a little bit about the process. Jess talked to me about this last time. If that land is sold or becomes under the jurisdiction of the county through a land exchange, it is open space zoning. Then it has to be rezoned. And that is where the public Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Supervisors have the final say about how that is zoned. So it goes through a public hearing process just like everything else.
If what if it's sold to a private developer that wants to come in and put 500 units of a golf course over between I-40 and the Turkey Hills?
He's bought what is zoned as open space, and then he is going to have to go through the public hearing process, which will be quite involved in order to do that. It is the same process that has been followed with almost all the zoning in Doney Park that is commercial zoning, except legal non-conforming uses that came along before the zoning ordinance. It is not a free-for-all.
I have a question for Melissa. As I recall in previous meetings, we've said that you've said that much of the land that's Forest Service has already been zoned, and
that's correct.
So that zoning would then automatically apply.
Oh,
some of it has been zoned, some of it has not been zoned, and state land has not been zoned. So, and John is right. If unzoned land then is sold for private development, it will come in and the zoning that would be applied would be open space. And then they, whoever were to buy it would need to go through the whole rezoning process to change that. And so some of the Forest Service land, and I could flip back to the map, but then I'd have to change screens again. But if you recall on the on the area plan map, the yellow area with the underlined hatching is Forest Service land, and I believe it's zoned for 2.5 acre minimum. It could be 5 acre minimum.
Hmm.
And the rest of it that is in green is not zoned. Did you need me to go back to that image?
No.
No.
Nope.
Nope.
Okay, so paragraph B, we're good with. Is that, are we in consensus? Moving on to item number 1B1 here. Minimum net lot size of 1 acre or greater should be maintained. Net lot size is something that to planners makes a lot of sense. And I think Saylor and a couple other folks had mentioned earlier that even though we've been involved in this for quite a while, I don't know exactly what that means. And and things that I don't know what they mean scare me.
Mm-hmm.
I think we could just take that out if it makes sense. You know, we could just refer to minimum lot size of 1 acre and everybody will understand. The same with net density.
Yeah.
I think we could just say total density.
That's okay with me, as I understand what net means in this case, but for a policy document like this, not necessary to have it in there. So Rob's made a good comment on that.
It should be clear to people that aren't involved in this kind of stuff what this exactly means, and this helps.
Yep, sure does.
So how does this prevent downsizing from 5 acres, 2.5 acres? Can it, so zoning changes could go from 5 acres down to 1 acre? That kind of conflicts with maintaining existing zoning density.
Only if they meet all the criteria.
Yeah, and you've got to go through the rezoning or zoning change process, which is another impediment to doing that. If you already have, say, AR5 and you want to go to AR2.5, we've had a case right here on Copeland Lane a number of years ago that was exactly that. We turned it down for that reason.
But see, that's what I don't understand. 1 and 2 contradict, because didn't we talk about this 20% if you go from, if you have 5 acres and one wants to change it, halving it from 5 to 2.5 does number 2. It exceeds 20% because you're halving it to 2.5. So if you go to 1, doesn't those 2 contradict each other?
So
this we talked about this earlier, a long time ago, the 20%, and everyone said, take it out, but we wanted to keep it in because we didn't want people to split their lots from 5 to 2.5. And you said, well, it's their right, but we didn't want to increase the density. And now we're going from 20%, then we're going to 1 acre. I don't like.
So read the one below, read number 3.
Okay. Lots of adjacent. Okay. Adjacent and abutted, because remember, adjacent is across and abutted is right next to each other, right? To residentially zoned lands.
Yeah, you listened rather well on that one, Liz.
Yes, I did.
Thank you.
So there's a really good example of what number 2 is speaking to there. There have been a couple of zone change requests, and you're just right on, Liz, that there were some 5 acre AR5 zoned parcels surrounded by AR2.5. They could not get the zone change to split that in just 2 because of the way the policy was written today.
So how does that one little acre get snuck in there? They're saying if there's not abutted, but it's just a development, then like what we have now, development's gonna be 1 acre.
This sets your minimum at 1 acre.
Okay.
Period. Never less than that.
Okay. And that's only for development, right? And is it only for developments? Like,
No.
Planned developments, it can be anything.
It could be anything.
Everything.
Oh. Oh, that's
How does that help us keep existing lot size?
Right. See, I don't like that number 1 that sneaks in there.
I don't like that either.
Take a look at Timberline, where you're going to have lots that are very close to 1 acre in size. Now you're limited in terms of what you can do with the septic system. If you're under 1 acre, no septic system. Therefore, minimum lot size is 1 acre, simply a de facto limitation. And that's probably one of the reasons why this statement is in here and is meaningful. Otherwise, there would be a lot of pressure to start subdividing 1 acre lots, and you wind up with something like Mountain Air or Kachina, where you have lots down in the 5,000 square foot size regimen.
If you don't set a minimum, then there's no minimum.
That's correct, because but even though the septic limits it, nevertheless, there may be a development that is proposed where you have a number of these 1/10 of an acre lots, and you have a separate lot just to handle the septic system for them. And you could make a case for that. So this is a good thing to keep in here, the 1 acre minimum.
So the 1 acre, okay, so the 1 acre minimum, but people said no, is for planned development communities. Like they have the streets, and we've got to tell they're not just people selling their lots, because I still don't. So you're saying this is for planned developments, right? But like if I wanted to split it, I couldn't split it because it's 1 acre and we're 2.5 when it's private, right? See, okay. I got to do more research. I still don't understand how you sneak that 1 acre in when we're saying we want to say 2.5 or greater.
Yeah, I'm concerned about that too.
So this also applies if you have a property owner with a 2 acre parcel and it's surrounded by 1 acre lots, then this is where that minimum, and if that was zoned for 2 acres, just imagine if you had a 2 acre zoned 2 acre parcel surrounded by 1 acre zoning, then this is the policy that would apply to that property if that person wanted to rezone it so they could split it in half, right? And this only applies to rezoning requests. And if you don't have a minimum in there of 1 acre, then what would you want the minimum to be? Because again, this goes back to the idea that you know, a property owner can request a rezoning for an increased density.
But I thought the minimum was just the 1 acre for future plan developments.
So planned developments have to be at least 10 acres in size to make them work. I mean, there are properties around. I mean, we'd have to go back and look at our charts, but you know, there are properties that are smaller than that wouldn't actually necessarily even need a subdivision, but just could be split into 2 potentially, but might need a rezoning. We've had that scenario. You know, where a property owner had 5 acres, they just wanted to split it into 2 to be 2.5 acres. Everyone else around them was on 2.5. They couldn't do it.
Right, because it butted in adjacent.
So that's an example, and that's not a planned development because that's just 2 lots. You've got to have a minimum of 10 acres to do the planned development.
Okay, and that's what I thought this 1 acre was about. I thought that in the old plan it said developments can go down as low as 1 acre, but all other properties 2.5 and above. AR 2.5 and above. That's my ignorance. I didn't know that there wasn't planned communities that were, and there was just a house and on it was just 1 acre. I thought it was like these little communities out here where they're all cemented streets, and I just thought it was a development plan. I didn't know you could go down that low. I thought it was 2.5, so me bad.
Okay.
Thank you for clearing that.
So is everyone here good with maintaining a minimum lot size of 1 acre? We should never go less than 1 acre in our planning area. Is that everybody on board with that?
Yep.
Yep.
I'm on board as long as we the existing zoning density is the rule, not the exception. And this is an exception for 1 acre, right?
Well,
you have to meet those criteria.
All of this is an exception because all of this has to meet the criteria that we described in paragraph A first, and then meet these additional requirements. So all of this, I believe, would be considered an exception in this case.
Okay, so we're looking at I and trying to approve I right now?
Yeah, minimum lot size of 1 acre is a minimum.
This is Brian. I agree.
Okay. Anyone disagree with that? All right. So total density, we've removed net because that just kind of confused folks, and total density makes more sense. Should not exceed 20%. So total density increase, I'm sorry, should not exceed 20%. Still has to maintain that minimum 1 acre lot size, but shouldn't exceed that 10 or 20% increase. How do folks feel about that?
I'd like to put a period there at 20% so that it applies to all development, not just those greater than 10 lots.
Well, that would, what Melissa was talking about earlier, where a 5 acre lot split would then preclude that from happening.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily preclude it from happening, but it would certainly be a point that you'd have to evaluate when that rezoning came to the P&Z Commission for a recommendation to the board.
And we know they've been denied based on this.
Yes.
So Bernice, you're concerned with 4 developments greater than 10 lots. Can you help me understand where you're going there?
Well, I just think it should be all development, not just those greater than 10, so that it protects neighborhoods, the density in the neighborhoods.
Well, I think you may have a problem with actually doing that. Very simply because let's say you've got 10 acres and you can legally split that. And then sell off part of it. We've had a number of cases like this come to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a recommendation or for approval, actually. Since the zoning doesn't change, it's within the zoning. If you have 10 acres in an area that's zoned AR5, it's a simple matter of a lot split. And that is simply an administrative procedure. It doesn't even come
legal right.
Yep.
John, isn't that a legal right?
That is a legal right. Yes, absolutely.
Well, that's already zoned for 5 acre parcels. And if you've got 10 acres and you want to split it into 2 5s that it is already zoned for, would that be a zone change?
No, that's not a zone change.
Right.
You can split the property. However, if you're already, let's say you've got 10 acres, which is for some reason zoned AR 2.5, and there are parcels of property within the county like that, you can look at it and say, I've got 10 acres, zoning's AR 2.5, split it into 4. Matter of fact, I've got properties like that adjacent and that abut mine. It's a right, as Rob says.
Yep. Okay, so from the rest of the committee members on item number 2 here, B2, any thoughts?
This is Brian. I'm not sure what we gained by deleting 4 developments greater than 10 lots. I heard Bernice ask that.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Melissa, I think that for developments greater than 10 lots, I think that's covered in the zoning ordinance.
It's subdivision at that point, planned residential development, right?
Yeah.
So that would require a, so this was added in because a PRD needs 10 acres or more.
Right.
Planned residential development needs 10 acres or more to work, basically. And this is this portion is highlighted because this is the new language.
Right.
Where did this language come from?
So currently, the net density increase should not exceed 20% is your existing language. This is a suggestion to address those situations where rezonings have not been approved. Just that one that we described where there was a 5 acre AR 5 acre minimum surrounded by AR 2.5 parcels. So this would help with that situation where that was not approved because
Melissa, was that suggestion, the addition that was suggested here, was that by the subcommittee that reviewed this document?
So staff suggested that and the subcommittee looked at it.
Yes. And the one committee member agreed with staff on that one. That was me.
Thank you, John.
I think so as existing density by taking off that for developments greater than 10 lots, because there's a lot of area around here that is smaller than 10 lots that could be subdivided and rezoned to smaller lots.
And those areas that would be subdivided would still be under the restriction of no less than 1 acre.
Right.
Right, but this further restricts it so that the increase in, is that the density increase doesn't increase by 20%. I like it the way it was.
So Bernice, what do you think about that scenario that we described though, where there was that one 5-acre parcel surrounded by 2.5-acre parcels and it could not be divided because of this?
Well, they knew that when they bought the parcel, right?
Not necessarily.
Well, that would be my due diligence if I was trying to buy property that I wanted to split, to find out if it could be split to begin with.
Is there anything in this document that would then prevent you from applying a second time and splitting it again?
Not in a policy document.
No. So ultimately you could just keep splitting things.
Well, there is a limit in terms of when you start to split more than 5, then you're into a subdivision. You have to, by state rules, create a subdivision. So we do watch those. Land division permits are things that we look at all the time, and we have to go back and do research to make sure they haven't been split.
So if we just take that out, then it includes both. It includes a neighborhood or someone trying to split their lot and developers. But the way it's written now, it just seems like it's directed toward developments. Yeah. And Bernice is saying, I want to be aware for a single landowner not to do that 20% and developers not to do that for 20%. So if it's the way it's written now, it just looks like it's gearing up for developments, but to protect just someone else from splitting their lots to lessen density. Just like that guy that was surrounded by 10 acres and he couldn't split his 5-acre lot, or the one that's in 5 and everyone's 2.5. I guess some people want freedom to split their lots and others are just concerned about density. So
I think, Liz, you just nailed it there. There's a balance between property owner rights and their ability to exercise those rights versus our community, values and desires. And that's a tough balance to try to, if someone bought 5 acres or 10 acres and intended when they retired to be able to split that, sell half off, and that was the rest of what they were going to need to retire. I don't think I'd want to be the guy right now to say, sorry, you can't do that. As long as what they're doing isn't diminishing the values that we value here in this community with respect to rural and large lots and things like that.
Yes, it's a balance, It is. Just like being zoned for horses. Someone rezoned land next to us and it was a beautiful green space, and I love horses, but it's not a green space anymore. It's weeds and it's dirt and it's dust because they don't know how to take care of the land. So this is the same thing. I don't know.
I have a question here for Melissa or maybe John. Is this covered in other documents related to land use within the county or the state?
You mean as far as density increases?
Yes.
Well, the zoning ordinance to some degree, but the rezoning, this is the standard particular to your area.
Okay.
And very simply, you talk about rezoning relative to this. That's up to the P&Z Commission to make a recommendation to the board. And, it's a pretty stringent public hearing process to get there.
If there was a zone change requested for a property up on 89 that was not in an area plan, then staff and the commission and the board of supervisors will look at the comprehensive plan for guidance. But in this case, because of the area plan, then this is the document that, well, we'll look at all those documents, but this will be also reviewed.
So let's look for some community consensus here. I think the discussion has decided, do we leave the area in red right there, 4 developments greater than 10 acres in, or should we take it out? And I would like to kind of do a quick poll here on what we think.
I vote for taking it out and leaving it the way it is in the existing area plan.
Thank you, Bernice. Anyone have a difference of opinion?
Okay. Actually, I think I'll go along with Bernice on this.
I go along with Bernice.
All right. Anybody supporting keeping it in there?
Well, I have a concern in that by keeping it in there, you're restricting it to the developments. If you take it out, you then are potentially penalizing that those people that bought land and said, okay, we're going to split this when we retire or whatever.
Well, where the rubber meets the road, I don't think that it works quite like that.
Okay.
Because, you may have a situation where there's no zoning change requested, and you can still, you have the legal right to split that property.
Only if it meets the existing zoning.
Right.
If it meets the existing.
Yeah.
Okay. That clarified it for me. Because it's meeting existing zoning. That's what I didn't quite.
Right, and that scenario that I keep bringing up, the 5-acre parcel surrounded by 2.5 acres, that was zoned for 5 acres.
Yeah.
Okay, it sounds to me like the majority of the folks here tonight agree that we should remove the section in red. And we're going to move on to item number 3, Bravo 3 here. Lots that are adjacent to residentially zoned land should be of equal or greater size than the adjacent parcels. Anyone have any discussion on that?
Nope, and that is also covered in the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
I agree with it.
And we don't have to use a butted.
Well, actually, I think that's what the zoning ordinance gets you. Adjacent to
or abutting
is even better than I think what we have in the zoning ordinance right now, because the loophole is you go across the road.
Right.
You can get it.
So we're good with number 3 then?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I feel like it's my duty.
That's okay.
What if you have a lot? What if you have a 2.5 acre lot, then you have a 5 acre lot, and all the 5 acre lots are in like one area, but along the border, you have some 2.5 acre lots. Does that mean that the people can start subdividing their 5 acre lots into 2.5 acre lots?
Only
or do they have to be adjacent on all sides?
It is immediately adjacent. Essentially, that is how the zoning ordinance works.
So does it have to be adjacent on all sides?
Well, okay, if let's say you've got, Johnson Ranch is an example. On several sides, you have AR 2.5 zoning. All the lots in the Johnson Ranch development that are adjacent, and I think that's the wording in the zoning ordinance, although they abut those properties, they have to be 2.5 acres.
But other lots internal to Johnson Ranch are subdivided down further to the 1 acre.
Right. And that
neighbors aren't adversely impacted by that zoning change. They maintain that 2.5 acre parcel next to them.
Yep, absolutely right.
So if you have like a block of 5 acre parcels and then a line of, on the outskirts of one side of that block, you had 2.5 acres, the people with the 5 acre lots wouldn't be able to downsize the 2.5 acres. Is that what you're saying?
No.
That is what you're saying, right, John?
Okay, let's see, if you have, you're going to have to go through a zone change to do
but
something
if
like
we
that.
kept this in, it would make it so that that zone change would be likely to be approved.
No, not necessarily. You're going through the public hearing process and you have the requirements of the zoning ordinance also that you have to meet.
So with Johnson, with using the example of Johnson Ranches, the lots that are adjacent to Johnson Ranches, could they downsize from 2.5 acres to whatever the lot size of Johnson Ranches is?
So Johnson Ranch was done as a PRD, planned residential development. So the overall density would be looked at there. So that's a specific zoning designation, PRD, planned residential development. And then you look at the details of that rezoning and the subdivision to look at the density and the minimum lot size. So yeah, that would be an example where if there was a large piece or parcel next to Johnson Ranch, then the standard to look at would be what was approved with that planned residential development. Or if on the other side, there were 2.5 acre parcels, for instance.
So those 2.5 could be downsized to equal or greater size than Johnson Ranches?
Potentially, yeah. But you still have to go through the rezoning process. You still have the public hearing process that you have to go through, which is going to constitute somewhat of an impediment to individually residentially zoned properties.
I think the flip side of looking at this policy is to think if it wasn't in there, then what this is trying to at least maintain compatibility with your existing zoning. So if and I'll just go back to that 5 acre, 2.5 acre scenario. If the 5 acre AR5 zoned parcel was surrounded by 2.5 acres, it could only ever go as small as 2.5 acres. So that's the other way of looking at it, kind of in the inverse.
This is Evelyn. Could that end up being a domino effect? So then, okay,
yeah,
that 5 acres just got down to 2.5. So now the next 5 acres that maybe was next to it can now go down to 2.5. So then maybe the 5 acre areas can all drop down to 2.5 because they keep getting adjacent to one that has been down to 2.5.
And you still have to go through the rezoning process to do that.
So it's not possible to have a domino effect.
I think it could be.
It could.
Theoretically, you could, and it's one of the tactics that developers use in buying up properties over a long period of time and then applying for rezoning like that.
Right, and then they could be adjacent to 1 acre properties, and then the 2.5s could downsize, and then the 5s could downsize more.
And you're still going to have to come to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a recommendation to the board. And if you look at what is outlined in the area plan, that gives a lot of weight to saying, no, this is not a good thing for the community.
I would suggest that we're already pretty deep into having met a bunch of criteria to get here.
Yeah.
And the likelihood of meeting all of those criteria, still getting here, and then trying to split even further is probably pretty low.
Pretty slim. You're right, Rob.
You've jumped through a lot of hoops to get here.
That's right.
And I think the benefit, and that's, I think what Melissa was pointing out, is it's important to note that there is a significant benefit to this statement, meaning that we can't reduce, if you currently own a 2.5 acre parcel, somebody next to you can't make it less than that. So you're not going to be impacted. And I think that's probably what the majority of the folks in our area plan area are concerned about.
And I'd like to say something to Bernice about this. I wish you could have been at the Planning and Zoning Commission hearings on Johnson Ranch and the debate that ensued over exactly this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to eliminate that problem coming up again and increasing density by using zoning changes, you know, as fuel for downsizing.
Then everyone in the community has an opportunity before the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Supervisors to say, we don't want this. And believe me, that works.
Liz, if you were just talking, I think you're muted, so.
No, I wasn't for once.
Okay. So as a committee, we need to take a look here and decide whether item number 3 here, Bravo 3, has merit in protecting downsizing of lots adjacent to your lot, or if we're more concerned about the potential for the domino effect, and if there is a way that we could reword this.
Well, one thing, I see the word immediately adjacent. You can simplify that and make it very specific by saying abutting or adjacent parcels.
Okay. Yes. Melissa will take care of that for us. Other committee members, any thoughts on whether
could we say that the parcels have to be adjacent to it on all sides?
I think the zoning ordinance is fairly specific about how that is delineated.
But the zoning ordinances are guided by this document, right?
No, it's the other way around.
Well, these policy documents do help guide the zoning ordinance. And
how about lots that are adjacent on all sides to residentially zoned land should be equal or greater size than, but it could be mixed, you know, like it could have a 5 acre could have a 5 acre next to it, or a 5 acre could have a 2.5 on one side and a 1 acre on one side. So that 5 acre could downsize to a 5 1 acres.
If it's touching, it shouldn't be less than the land that it's touching.
But which
is that ultimately what we're trying to say here?
She's saying which one? The one, the 0.5? Yeah.
I just added in surrounding parcels. Does that help?
Abutting or adjacent surrounding parcels. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. And I understand where Bernice is coming from on this. And as far as what she would like to see in here, I think that's the kind of thing that a policy document is the right place for.
Mm-hmm.
And I think,
you know, and if it's mixed zoning around it, which one? You know, does it have to? Then the largest.
It says equal or greater size.
Then the largest adjacent surrounding parcel.
We could add largest.
Yeah.
Well, that may run afoul of what is in the zoning ordinance eventually.
What do you mean eventually, John?
Well, I haven't seen here in 9.5 years, I haven't seen any cases where that scenario has shown up. It could happen in the future. So perhaps, I don't know, maybe Bernice is on the right track here with that, because it's simply a matter of providing the guidance for what we want to look at.
So you can only downsize a 10 acre to 5, a 5 acre to 2.5. Mm-hmm. 2.5 could be, I don't know, it'd have to go to 1 2/4.
Well, if you had a 5 acre next to a 5 acre, and then on the other side of it, there's a 2.5 acre. So it could not be downsized to a 2.5 acre if it's still adjacent to another 5 acre. That protects those people next door.
I think Melissa just took care of that.
Property.
Yep. I think
if you read the edit now, I think go ahead.
I think item 3 now addresses that. Are you pleased with that?
Why don't I go ahead and read it? I can read it then. For
That's all right. That's all right, Melissa. We don't need to.
Okay.
If we have consensus on the committee now that item 3 works.
Yep.
And no further discussion, I think we're ready to move on to item 4.
Yes.
And so I did want to
it's 8 o'clock.
It's 8:01.
Yeah, it is. Well, But we
time
believe in
sunrise.
being timely, and the time has it's the bewitching hour. You don't want to see me at 8:02. So I think we've accomplished a lot tonight. I think we've gotten through some very difficult sections of this that are very, very important to the community as a whole. Unfortunately, this means that, you know, the next meeting we're going to continue this, so we're going to have to push that last chapter one more meeting out. But I think it's worth it.
I do too.
Makes it.
So I have a question for Melissa. You know, I think there's still a fair amount left in this chapter.
There
yes,
is.
There is.
Would it be worth having the subcommittee go back, take another look at it, and then bring it back to the full committee by the next meeting?
I think this is so important that the full committee should go through.
I agree. I don't think you don't have to meet again with the subcommittee.
Whoa. That's not what I said. What I said was to have the subcommittee take a look at it, and then it comes back to the full committee.
Well, I'll give you a comment on that, since I am the one non-staff member on the subcommittee. I think
I'm on it with you.
I'm on it too.
Yeah, but you've got to show up.
That's true. I'm on it too. That's right, John. You're right, because I haven't shown up to all of them.
With respect to that, I think that it is better that the committee of the whole look at the next time around.
I agree with John.
I agree.
I think we've made remarkable progress in wordsmithing this and getting to the point of what we're trying to do tonight.
What if we have a say an hour and a half second meeting?
Be fine with me.
We could try that again.
Another mini meeting but we have to have a quorum. And
right. Another second meeting in May.
Having just presided over one of those that didn't have a quorum, I'm
a little boring, huh?
Yeah, that's I think we ought to keep with the way that we're going without the second meetings, just to ensure that we get a quorum.
Well, if everybody is cognizant of the quorum requirement, having an intermediate meeting time-wise, it's a simple matter of saying, yes, I can be there, or no, I can't. And if you don't get the quorum via RSVP, then you don't have the meeting.
Right.
Postpone the meeting.
That's a good idea. Because these are tough things, and these are really, we're looking at things that the people, the residents, are very concerned about. So we have to really look at them well and consider the survey and go with what the people are asking.
This is the heart of what we're really doing here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is why I suggested the committee as a whole.
Right.
Okay. So we've got a suggestion that we have a second meeting between now and the next normally scheduled meeting.
Half the time.
Say again, Evelyn?
Half the time, so we don't create major burnout. I mean, instead of 3 hours, it could be an hour and a half, and just try to get done as much as we can.
Well, gee, I'm sorry. I'm willing to be here till the sun comes up, but I do understand your consideration, Evelyn.
I know you are, John.
All right.
You're amazing.
So, Melissa, do you have a proposed intermediate meeting date that we could use to continue our progress on this very important document?
Well, the halfway point would be Thursday, May 27th. That's 2 weeks from tonight.
Thursday, May 27th. Let me see.
And then
that's kind of too close to Memorial Day weekend, so maybe the 20th even.
So that would be a week from today.
Right. Just keep the ball rolling, but only half the time.
Anybody have a problem with the 20th of May for an hour and a half meeting that Evelyn's going to make sure we all get done with in an hour and a half?
I think the 20th is better than the 27th for sure.
I do too. Yeah.
You know, we've had people request that we meet a little later. Could we start it at 6?
Since we're only going for an hour and a half, I think 6 o'clock sounds like a good idea.
Yep, that works.
Okay, and we'll just let Melissa know for sure by Wednesday if we're going to have a quorum, and if not, she just lets us know it's canceled.
I think that's fair.
Okay.
Everyone's good with that?
The 20th at 6. What again? Say.
Come on, Liz, keep up.
I'm not.
She's trying.
All right. Yes, the 20th at 6 p.m.
Okay.
So May 20th, 6 to 7:30 p.m.
Okay.
Good to go.
And let Melissa know when she asks. If you really
let's make sure that we share with our friends and neighbors that we'll be doing that again. I'm super impressed to see all the folks still here tonight. I thank you all for being here, and I hope you are seeing that the people that are here working on this document are your friends and neighbors and really want to maintain our neighborhood exactly the way that it is. Melissa, I think in your agenda items here now, we're to we've figured out what our next meeting is. So are we to public comment?
Sorry, Rob, hang on. I am getting back to that slide. Hang on.
No problem. Maybe a round of applause for Melissa and all the work she does in keeping us straight here, huh?
No. Let's wait till we get this done. Then we can have this. Okay, so here we go. Did that display?
Yes.
Okay.
But you're still in PowerPoint, so.
Yep, right. So just going down to our proposed schedule. So next meeting, well, we know now would be May 20th.
Yep.
And then here we go.
All right, so we're back to public comment. And as we've emphasized, we care significantly about all of the friends and neighbors that are here. Appreciate very much that you are. If anyone has some comment they'd like to share with us yet this evening, please announce your name and then share your thoughts.
Sheila, I really appreciate your strong work tonight.
Sheila, you're distorting really badly for me. I don't know about everyone else.
Yeah, Sheila, I can't hear you either.
It's distorted.
I don't think I have mine. Is that still distorted?
Yeah.
Can I type it in the chat?
Okay, whoever can understand that is a Star Wars.
She said type in the chat. She said she's going to type in the chat.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, and we appreciate that, Sheila.
I think this is one of the examples of too much density out here. Our infrastructure for our internet services, as well as our water, can't keep up with it.
So we need to invest in infrastructure, right, Bernice?
Let's keep the density down.
All right, other public comment. If you'd like to share some thoughts with us, please announce your name and then share your thoughts. All right.
Wait a minute, Rob.
Go ahead, Russell. We got you.
Friedman, that's a tough one to talk about, zone changes, I'll tell you, because when I first moved out here and first bought property, I actually had faith in the zoning that if it was zoned 5 acres, it would remain 5 acres. But as time went on, I realized that's not the case because people can apply for zoning changes. And usually the reason someone would do that, from my experience, is to make more money. Mm-hmm. And it's usually not about protecting the way of life for the people that live in that area. And I did that myself. I ran into that same issue that I think Bernice was talking about. We bought 17.5 acres to develop, and it was bordered on one side by a 2.5 acre lot. And then it was in a 5 acre zoning, and people were coming up wanting me to split it all the time into 2.5 acre lots. And being who I am, I really wasn't interested in the time at making the money. I was more interested in keeping the larger size lots because I lived in that area, which is what we did. We ended up putting 2 5 acre lots and 1 7.5 acre lot. But it's usually about the money. From what I've seen, people always want to make more money on it. And when you were talking about that planned residential development, Johnson Ranch, and putting the smaller 1 acre lots and then having that open space, I thought the same thing, I think, that Bernice did, because down the road, it's going to happen. There is going to be someone come that will want to take that open space and try to develop it. And from what I've seen in my life, it usually happens. And it's, I don't like it. And those two slides that Melissa showed, one of them was the same area developed into the larger lot sizes. One was developed in downsizing with open space. When it's developed into the larger lot sizes, it's pretty much done. It stays that way. It won't be subdivided into smaller lots. But when you put those smaller lots in there, that can expand. And I've seen it happen in other places. And that 1 acre size would start to expand. I think that's a bad decision myself doing that, even though it did provide some open space, but you know, it's it can add to other things and lead that direction down a path. So anyway, I've talked, pardon?
Oh, I just wanted to clarify that slide again, and I know it can certainly seem like there's a lot of leeway there, but that open space is actually designed as a tract in the subdivision. So it would have to go through a whole nother process to change it. It's very difficult to change those, just to clarify.
Yeah, I heard that and I recognize that but it is a possibility where when has houses on it that people live in, they've lived there for a while, they're pretty much satisfied with that. It stays that way. There isn't that possibility of it changing as easily. Oh. And the larger lot sizes also, this is not saying one is really bad or the people that live there are bad, but they're more rural minded people and that they, you know, have more rural ideas where when you start to live on smaller lots, you're getting people that are more city oriented, more residential, more subdivision. It's a different type of person. And I don't know, it makes it more possible to change. I'll bet that someday that would change. Maybe none of us will be here, but it would probably happen. Anyway, I've talked my 3 minutes, I'm sure.
Thank you, Russell. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Russell.
Other folks from the general public that would like to share some thoughts?
I would, but we have 3 minutes. Is that it, Rob?
Mr. Leroy, yes, sir, you do.
Okay. High five to you, Rob. High five to John Ruggles. High five to Bernice and everybody else who challenged the language in the existing document tonight. I mean, seriously, it completely enthused. Bernice in particular, thank you. A lot of courage. Thank you for speaking up, man. You made my last 6 months. You really did. Thank you. And Rob, thank you. Ultimately, it's going to come down to supervisor vote. I realize that's not on the agenda. Hopefully, the residents' voices and the residents in our community will recognize that supervisors are elected officials, and therefore, if they rule against the majority of the survey responses, their political lives may be in jeopardy. And beyond that, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Leroy. Other folks in the public that would like to share some closing thoughts with us?
Hey, Rob, were we able to see anything from Sheila?
I'm sorry?
Did Sheila post comments?
I put it in the chat.
In chat right now.
Oh, we don't see it.
Okay, and actually she's not breaking up anymore. She just spoke and she doesn't seem to be breaking up. So
how's this?
I can hear her just fine. Yeah.
Awesome. No, I just wrote a sentence. Multimodal connections came up again around the rural activity centers, and the connectors are called trails. And I'm just requesting that any trails created should be the same construct as what the Forest Service is building between Timberline and town. And that will keep our rural flavor out here and eliminate added concrete or pavement. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sheila. Appreciate that. Any other public comment here yet this evening?
This is Don Walters.
I want to say one thing. Sailor is a great photographer. That's all I have to say. No, she is awesome, man. She's a great photographer. Just saying.
All right. Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
This is Don Walters. I appreciate that there was a couple of links put up on the chat. It would benefit everybody to go in and look at those documents and read them and understand more about planning and zoning and how that works. It's really complicated, but it's a pretty safe process. And my family's been here since 1861, so I'm as concerned as anybody about this. But thank you for your all time.
Excellent. Thank you for being here tonight, Don. Other public comment?
I had a comment. More of a question than anything else. It was talking about transportation and then talking about trails. When we're talking trails, are we only talking about horse, hoof, bike, walking, or is there anything, or as ATVs, that type of thing, people that are handicapped that can't get around by a horse or a bicycle? Liz had brought it up, going from, I didn't quite understand all of it, but going from maybe, say, Civil Saddle to Timberline or something like that. Is that strictly just that? Because in other states, they do have trails for ATVs also.
Bruce, great points. And transportation is, I think, our last topic to be discussed here yet tonight, or in the upcoming meetings here. And look forward to hopefully being able to participate in that or sharing your thoughts with us on that. ATVs obviously are important to a number of people out in this community, and being able to make sure that we're all working as neighbors together is important.
Yes, because we saw Cave Hill taken away from us in the past, where there was ATV trails going through there. I will admit that they were abused at times, and very much so in a lot of ways. But still, I think there should be thought about that also for those that aren't well, they're handicapped and they can't get to enjoy the woods as others do. I think that's simply said that way. I just want to say that.
Thank you, Bruce. I appreciate that.
Rob, this is Evelyn. I have a quick question. The very first slide that we saw had some questions, I guess, that people had asked. I'm just wondering if we covered that.
Yeah, the questions that were asked at the previous meeting were responded to as part of that slide. And, you know, due to open meeting laws, items that are not on an agenda can't necessarily be responded to during that particular meeting. So we actually answered each of those questions as they came up. The questions that related to the topics that we were discussing tonight, I hope were answered real time. Some of them are yet to be discussed, and those we'll continue to answer those as we move through this particular chapter of the document.
Okay.
Other public comment? Hearing none, I'll have to ask Melissa to jump all the way back to the end, and we'll see what that says for us. I believe after the final public comment, was any committee final thoughts? Anyone on the committee have anything they'd like to share? Mr. Ruggles.
I'd like to add one. I am going to reiterate what Commissioner Walters said about reviewing the regional plan and the comprehensive plan. This is going to sound like the teacher lecturing the class a little bit. Do your homework. read this before you come to the meeting. And this is not just the committee, but I would encourage the public also to do that. And in addition to that, I'm going to add all 257 pages of the zoning ordinance, because it would be very helpful reading that. It will allow you to make your point much more effectively if you know what's in that zoning ordinance and you come to the committee meeting. Do it, please.
Thank you,
yes,
John.
sir. Well said. Thank you.
Other members of the committee, any other comments that you'd like to share before we close tonight?
This is Brian. Go ahead, Geronimo.
Sure, I can go after you, Brian. Go ahead and go, and then I'll go after you.
Thank you, sir. I want to say two things. Number one, I appreciate the number of people from the public that are attending, listening, engaged. It gives us different ideas. It helps us articulate them better. And secondly, I want to thank everyone on the committee. We've been at this for 1.5 years now, well, close to it. And it's been a challenge, but it's been a delight working with each of you. And I just say thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I'm actually kind of sick of you, but I'm.
Yeah, okay, I get it, Sailor. That's why I'm not buying any more photographs.
Just kidding, Brian. Just kidding.
Any other committee member thoughts to share before we close here? And I think we'll go to Supervisor Vasquez.
Yeah, I'm really thankful. I'm really thankful for all the people that have shown up here, and please help spread the word to your friends and neighbors and all the other people in the area that are concerned about their community. Thanks.
Good point, Bernice. Any other committee members? All right, Supervisor Vasquez, you got it.
All right, thank you. Well, I just want to thank everyone for all their time and effort in going through this. It feels like going through it with a fine-tooth comb, but it was obvious that some of the concerns were alleviated by going through and looking at the language. I again would reiterate what John Ruggles said about read the plans, do the homework. These are our guides. We've been having several land use hearings recently, and this is what we use. And if there's something that, if there's a land use request that you're opposed to, I would say two things. One, please contact the supervisors and let them know of your opposition, because that allows us to know what the public wants or feels about the issue. But two, one thing that I learned is if you can get 1/3 of your area to be in opposition and to show opposition to the county, then that requires a supermajority vote in order to change that zoning change. And so instead of needing 3 votes, it needs 4 out of 5 to be able to change that zoning law. So I just wanted to put that out there and remind folks, so that way there are ways to show your opposition if there's a zoning change that you do not like or that falls through one of those loopholes that were talked about tonight. And so please continue to stay engaged. Hopefully by going through the plan and being part of the plan now, a lot of those potential problems down in the future can be alleviated, but there will always be those requests from developers or from folks who want to get those zone change. But just know that as part of our due diligence as supervisors, we do go through and review the plans. The plans, we've been told the plans are our guides, and we do listen to public comment about what is best for the neighborhood. So again, just thank you for all your time. Those of you that have been through this from the beginning, I mean, I think this is like a meeting 21 or something like that. It's been, you know, a long road, and a lot of progress has been made. There's a few things that still need to be tightened up and cleaned up, but I'm really excited and encouraged to see the progress that's being made with this plan. So thank you everyone for your time tonight.
Hey, this is something for Supervisor Vasquez. It's even better than you portrayed it. It only takes 20% of the surrounding property owners to protest a change, and that gets the supermajority. Makes your job easier, I think.
It does. It does. Well, thank you for that clarification. I understood 1/3, but 20% means that threshold is lower. I don't know how many residents are in the Doney Park, Timberline, Fernwood area that would need that 20% threshold. That would be something that you'd have to research or whatnot. But that is something to know, that in the event that there is a zoning change request that is unpopular with the community, there are ways to help make it so that it's harder to make that change if the majority of the community is opposed to it. So,
Rob,
thank you.
Can I say one more thing? Mr. Vasquez and Ms. Carver, can we have lunch next week? Just contact me on my email. Thank you.
We'll leave social plans out of this. I would like to wrap this meeting by saying thank you very much to all those folks that have participated throughout this period tonight, making sure we're informed and confirming the thoughts that I think the majority of us on this committee have about how we maintain Doney as Doney is the most important part of our work tonight. So I thank all of you for being part of that. And I look forward to seeing every single one of you at the next meeting.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you very much. And good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
And hey, just for Supervisor Vasquez, I still got you on the calendar for next Wednesday at White Dove.
I believe we're still good. Yes.
Good to go. Thank you.
You're welcome. And if anybody else is looking to set up an appointment, please reach out to Arena Contreras, my district director, so we can work on scheduling some time. I would love to meet with as many of you as possible. Thank you.
Thumbs up. Just a big thank you to you, Melissa. Thanks again very much. Appreciate your efforts.